hadn't moved for at least 5 minutes, barely daring to breathe. My focus was locked on the large fish, waiting for it to drift just a little closer. Finally, my handmade bamboo spear struck downward through the water. I felt it graze the fish's side, but it was only a glancing blow, and in an instant, the fish darted away. "Damn it!" I shouted in frustration. For 3 days, I had been stuck waiting out the hurricane that had battered this small island, the one I had been stranded on for months. Technically, it was a typhoon since I was in the South Pacific. Food had been a constant struggle. Coconuts were plentiful, but the only protein came from the fish I caught, either trapped in tidal pools as the water receded or speared with my crude weapon. I'd been hoping to land a bigger fish long before now, but the tide still had a few hours to go before it was fully out. I used to love fish. It had always been one of my favorite foods until I had to eat it every single day, sometimes more than once. With no real cooking tools, my only option was to clean the fish, wrap the fillets in wet seaweed, and cook them directly on the hot coals of my fire. After 6 months, I had grown to hate the taste. But like it or not, I had to eat. I decided to try a new spot, glancing toward the churning waves, still restless and higher than usual after the storm. Then out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. A brief glint of sunlight reflecting off something in the water. I waited, staring at the horizon. But when nothing else appeared, I turned to head toward a deeper tidal pool. The water was up to my knees, but I knew as the tide continued to fall, this pool would shrink to just a few inches, while the deeper one ahead would still hold some depth. As I neared it, I caught another flash of something. Just a flicker. Curiosity got the better of me. I turned back toward the shore, scrambling up one of the many volcanic rocks jutting from the sand. From this higher vantage point, I scanned the ocean, and my heart nearly stopped. A boat. For over 6 months, I had been stranded here, and this was the first sign of another human being. But as quickly as my hopes surged, it faltered. Yes, it was a boat, but it was in rough shape. Both the fore and aft masts were broken off, and water was creeping dangerously close to the port holes. As I watched, sunlight bounced off the glass. "Damn," I muttered. The only thing keeping it afloat is probably trapped air pockets. Shells, still wrecked or not, it was the closest thing to salvation I had seen in half a year. The boat was slowly being pushed shoreward by the wind, which was still blowing fairly hard after the hurricane or typhoon or whatever the hell you wanted to call it. I had been born on the east coast of the United States and still always thought of storms like that as hurricanes. Based on how hard the wind was blowing and trying to estimate how much the outbound tide was slowing its progress, I guessed that the boat would hit the coral reef, blocking access to the shore in about 45 minutes. Even if it had been high tide, I don't think the boat could have cleared the reefs. At high tide, there was about 6 feet of water over the reefs, and I doubted there could have been much more than 3 feet of water over them. Now, with how waterlogged the boat appeared to be, I knew it had to have a draft of a lot more than just 6 feet. As the boat hit the razor-sharp coral, it would be ripped to shreds. I still had, I guessed, about 45 minutes before that would happen, and wondered if there was anything on board I could salvage before it was consumed by the sea. I ran back to the old lava tube where I had made my shelter and grabbed what perhaps is my second most prized possession on the island. Perhaps I should stop for a minute to explain how I came to be on this island. I had been hired on as cook on a freighter making the San Francisco-Tokyo run. And when that ship had been sunk in another typhoon, I had barely managed to grab a life vest and jump overboard before my ship sank. As far as I knew, I was the only survivor. I had seen several of my shipmates also jump overboard as the ship began taking on water, but had not seen anyone else since. For 3 days, I was tossed by waves. The first night, the waves were towering cliffs, and I don't know how I lived through the tempest. For 3 days, I had no food and no water. Luckily, I was in the South Pacific and at least didn't have to worry about hypothermia or freezing to death. The lack of food and water, especially water, was already affecting me though. I had already begun to hallucinate and knew it was probably just a matter of hours before my thirst forced me to drink seawater that I knew would have killed me in a matter of hours. From what I had read, it would have been a rather painful death. I thought I was still hallucinating when I heard the sound of surf. Luckily for me, the tide was almost at its highest point that third night, so I just floated over the coral reef. I woke up the next morning, lying on a shore as a rain squall moved in. It was all I could do to turn over on my back and open my mouth, trying to catch the life-giving water falling from the skies. I managed to crawl across the sand and collapsed in the shade of some trees. I had no idea where I was and whether or not there were any predators, human or otherwise, on the island. I woke up at dusk and began to explore in the dwindling light. I actually tripped over something in the fading light, started cursing, and then realized that I had found one of the things that would keep me alive: a coconut. I immediately checked my pockets. Thank God I still had my knife. Years before, I had paid a ridiculous amount of money for a Swiss Army knife. It actually cost over $300, but came with so many different tools I couldn't even remember them all. This model, the Swiss Champ X AVT, had multiple blades, a can opener, a pruning blade, scissors, wood saw, reamer punch, serrated blade, 2 magnifying glasses, pliers, a fish scaler, 2 hooks, a chisel, and a corkscrew. It actually had a digital clock with an altimeter, barometer, and thermometer, and even included a ballpoint pen. I haven't actually found a use for the ballpoint pen on the island, but I am ready if I ever need to write something down. Using the knife, I soon had the coconut open and drank the liquid inside, then started scraping the coconut off the inside and eating it raw. I had to force myself to eat slowly. I knew after 3 days with no food, if I started eating too fast, I would get sick. I ate one slow bite at a time until nearly sunrise. The amount of money I paid for the knife no longer seemed quite so ridiculous. That became my prized possession. The next day, I found my second most prized possession already on the island. I was walking along the shore when I saw something sticking up out of the sand. That something was the fin of a surfboard. I quickly dug it out and now had food, coconuts, and a certain amount of mobility. I have no idea how many thousands of miles that surfboard traveled before ending up on this island, but I was certainly glad to find it. Now that you know just a little of my immediate past, let's go back to the present. I grabbed the surfboard, ran to the water's edge, and started swimming to the boat. Once I approached the coral reef, I pulled myself on top of the surfboard, then paddled over the reef with my hands. Within a few minutes, I had reached the sinking boat. I could immediately tell it had once been a beautiful and expensive yacht. At one time, it had twin masts so it could sail, but I could also see what looked like a large inboard engine sticking out the back. Probably 70 or 80 FT, I thought. I paddled up to the side, which by now wasn't much higher in the water than I was on top of my surfboard. I eased over the side, then hauled my surfboard in. I began calling out to see if anyone was on board, but no one answered my call. I started walking into the shambles. That was all that was left of the cabin, and saw steps leading down to what undoubtedly had been the galley, kitchen, and bunks. As I made my way down the steps, I was almost immediately in water up to my waist. On my left was a door, and when I forced it open, it turned out to be a huge galley. I was almost like a kid in a candy store, a multitude of pots and pans. As a professional chef, pots and pans were my life. I knew I needed something to carry them in. So, I continued my exploration. Immediately, across from the galley door, was what turned out to be a bedroom. I left that room and went to the front of the boat and opened a third door. Inside was a huge state room with a king-size bed. Water was covering the bed, but I grabbed the pillows and removed the cases. I now had 2 large pillowcases and headed back to the galley, where I stuffed as many pots and pans as I thought I would be able to carry on my surfboard. I went back to the first slightly smaller bedroom and also took the pillowcases off that bed as well. When I arrived on board, the water was up to my waist in the kitchen, but in just a few minutes, it had become several inches deeper. I knew I didn't have long to delay. I headed back to the stateroom and started opening drawers and closets. I found a .357 Magnum pistol and several boxes of ammunition and stuffed those inside my pockets. I also found several pairs of men's shorts, and since they looked like they would fit, grabbed those as well. My one pair of pants was just about worn out. I also found some soap and shampoo, and since I hadn't really felt clean in 6 months, grabbed those. I would have liked to have grabbed some blankets as well, but they were already all wet, and I knew the weight would be too much for me to handle just on my surfboard. I had only been on board for about 15 minutes, and the water was now up to my chest. So I grabbed the clothes, stopped in the galley, and grabbed the pillowcases with the pots and pans. Oh, I had also thrown in some rather nice acrylic plates and bowls, along with a variety of knives and forks and spoons. I even grabbed a couple of glasses and mugs. There was a 2-burner gas stove in the galley, with a heavy cast iron grate over the burners. There was no way to take the stove without a lot of tools I didn't have. Instead, I took the grate since I could use it to place over the fires I built every day. Once back on top, just as I was about to grab my surfboard, I heard what was unmistakably a groan. I already knew there was no one below decks, so I looked towards the bow front of the boat. I could see what looked like remnants of a sail lying there. I quickly made my way front, grabbed the sail, and pulled it back. I saw 2 things. One of the things I was actually very glad to see. The other, well, I was actually rather ambivalent about that. The thing I was actually glad to see, and the thing that I was ambivalent about, would probably surprise most people. The thing I was glad to see was a Zodiac, or rubber raft. It was tightly compressed in a cube, but I knew I could cut the straps and inflate it using the compressed air bottle that was attached. That meant I could inflate the raft, then go back and grab even more stuff, including blankets and more cooking utensils. The thing I was rather ambivalent about, well, that was a woman. I think most normal, red-blooded American men who had been marooned on a tropical island for 6 months would probably have been happier to see the woman than they would be to see the Zodiac. But then most red-blooded American men probably haven't had the same experiences with women I had, including spending 2 years in a state penitentiary on a bogus assault charge. The assistant district attorney, a woman, knew was completely bogus. Add to that, having your wife rip your heart out later on while stealing over $500,000. And the one thing in your life you loved more than any other in the world, your son. As I looked at this woman, a few things stood out. First, she had striking features with long red hair. Second, she was wearing very short shorts, and her bikini top was held together by a simple string. Third, I couldn't ignore the large, nasty-looking bruise on her forehead. Despite my past struggles with relationships, I never once considered abandoning her and taking the Zodiac back to shore. Leaving her to fend for herself was never an option. I would like to say that unfortunately, I can't. I actually did consider it. True, it was only for a second or two, but I did consider it. I'd been on a tropical island by myself for over 6 months without another human being to talk to. and I was almost happy. Yes, it got a little lonely at times, but I'd really been alone for most of my life. Even when I was around other people, most of the time I was alone. Other people in my life meant complications. Female people in my life meant big complications. For the past 2 years, before being shipwrecked, my only experience with women were with what I called honest women. On the ship one day, I had made a comment about only seeing honest women, and one of my shipmates asked me about it. Most women screw you, then take your money, your heart, everything important to you, I explained. Honest women are the ones who take the money first, then screw you. Or in other words, hookers. All they are interested in is money up front. Looks at this incredibly beautiful woman lying down at my feet. Unfortunately, she didn't look like the hooker type to me. Not that I would have had any money to pay her anyway. I already knew if she lived somehow, some way, I was going to get royally screwed. And I don't mean the good type of screwed. I don't know how long I stood there just looking at this woman. But when I looked up, I saw with a shock that we were only about 15 minutes from hitting the reef. Either the wind was blowing the boat faster than I thought, or I'd spent a lot more time than I realized staring at the lady. I immediately grabbed the Zodiac, cut the straps, and stepped to the railing, grabbing hold of one of the ropes hanging from it. I threw it out over the water while also pulling the trigger on the compressed air bottle. In the few seconds it took to hit the water, the raft was inflated. I quickly tied it to the sinking boat, threw everything I had brought up, which was now sitting in water, onto the raft, then threw my surfboard in. I stopped long enough to dump all the pots and pans out of one of the pillowcases, then took it with me. I ran below decks, but this time I ran into the Statita rooms and started looking for women's clothing. I wasn't even sure what I was grabbing, but just grabbed as much as I could, threw those items into the raft and ran back down again for a second load, plus grabbed some of the soaking wet blankets and sheets off the bed. I threw those in, then made my third trip. Remembering the large bruise on her forehead, I ran into one of the heads, bathrooms, and actually found several first aid kits. I grabbed those, then found shaving cream and a razor, plus refills and a half-dozen bars of soap. I even grabbed another bottle of shampoo. I was just about to leave when I realized I had nearly forgotten the most important thing in the head. A mirror. No, I am not narcissistic. But I knew from my Marine Corps days you could use a mirror to reflect sunlight and would have a signaling device that could be seen for miles. If I ever did see another boat or ship or plane, I would have some way of signaling. The mirror was glued to the wall, but I was able to pull the mirror off the wall without breaking it. By the time I got back up top, I saw we were only about 7 minutes from the reef. So I made one last trip below decks to the galley, where I grabbed a few more pots and several large knives, then started to leave. Idiot, I thought to myself. Turned back in and opened cabinets until I found a large spice rack with 30 or 40 bottles of spices on it. The only spice I had on the island was salt. So this would be a nice change of pace. Even more important, at least to my personal tastes, were several large sealed containers of coffee, instant and brewed. A smaller container of tea and a couple of containers of sugar, along with artificial sweetener. 6 months, 6 friggin' months without coffee or tea. I threw those containers into the pillowcase, found a metal coffee pot, and then headed back up top. By the time I got back up and carefully put all the stuff in the raft, being extra careful with the knives so they didn't puncture the raft, water was almost lapping over the railing. Water was actually splashing from the boat back into the Zodiac, so it now had several inches of water in it as well. I ran up front, carefully picked up Sleeping Beauty, and made my way back to the raft. I was shocked by how small she actually was. Somehow, She had looked larger while lying down. I doubt she weighed much more than 100 lb, maybe 105 at the most. It was difficult to gauge how tall she was since I was carrying her, but figured she was about 5'2" or maybe 3 in tall. I also couldn't help but notice, since they were now just a few inches from my face, her frame. They were small but looked firm and were absolutely beautiful. "Hey," I said. I could no longer trust women. Not that I couldn't appreciate beauty when I saw it. Despite everything women had done to try to destroy me since the day I was born, I don't hate women. I now prefer to deal with women on a strictly professional basis. But I can still look. Once I had put SB, Sleeping Beauty, in the raft, I stepped over, Untitus, from the boat and grabbed the oars from their holding place in the raft. I quickly rowed away toward shore. As I passed over the reef, I could see there was less than 2 feet of water covering the reef. Before I was halfway to shore, I heard the boat hit the reef. I stopped rowing and looked back. The bow of the boat was thrusting upward over the reef, and I could see the bottom was ripped open from the impact with the razor-sharp coral. As the bow came up, the aft was forced underwater, which must have allowed any remaining air pockets to empty out. With a loud groan, the boat slid backward, disappearing beneath the waves. I knew the ocean bottom on that side was well over 100 ft deep, and then slanted steeply down even more. I turned to my forced companion. "Well, come on, SB. Let's head for shore," I said to her unconscious form. As soon as the front of the Zodiac hit sand, I jumped out, grabbed a line at the front of the raft, and ran to the shade, pulling the Zodiac behind me. I picked up SB to get her out of the water and the bottom of the raft, and carefully laid her down with her back against a curving coconut tree. I grabbed one of the pots and headed inland to where a natural spring allowed water to bubble up to the surface. I filled the pot and returned to SB. I had no way of knowing how long it had been since she had had anything to drink, but based on my personal experience 6 months earlier, I knew I needed to hydrate her. I grabbed a spoon, and then one little sip at a time, I put water in her mouth and urged her to drink. "Come on, SB. Just a little drink." She dutifully swallowed each time until I estimated she had taken about a cup of water. I had a whole raft full of wet clothes and blankets, so I immediately started laying those out all across the sand. I knew with the wind still blowing briskly, plus the hot afternoon sun, it would not take long to dry these things out. Next, I pulled out all the pots and pans, then turned the raft over to dry. Now, it was time to try to treat my patient, SB. When I went back to check on her, she was still leaning back against the tree, but I could see her arms and legs were covered with goosebumps, and she actually looked like she was shivering. With the water sweeping across the bow of the boat before we left, and with the water in the bottom of the raft, I knew she was soaked, but thought it wouldn't take long for her to dry out. And in fact, her skin looked dry and bikini top looked dry, but her shorts were still soaked. Damn, I was suddenly reminded it had been well over 6 months since I had been to see a professional. Her shorts were actually pulled up into her crotch. Classic camel toe. That looks uncomfortable, I thought to myself. In fact, it was actually making me uncomfortable, but for another reason. Why is there never a professional around when you need one? I went back to check on the clothes, and most were dry, so I grabbed a sensible pair of shorts and t-shirt, then checked the blankets. One was dry, but the other needed a little more sunshine. I spread the dry blanket on the ground beside the tree, then gently picked SB up and put her in the middle of the blanket. "Sorry, SB," I whispered, "but I need to get you into dry clothes." I gently lifted her up, untied the string holding her top, and pulled it away before slipping her damp t-shirt over her head, carefully guiding each arm through the sleeves. I tried to focus on something else, maybe the most complicated recipe I'd ever made. But my mind kept wandering. I hesitated before removing her shorts, my thoughts scrambling through the steps of making Hollandaise sauce in an attempt to stay distracted. Finally, I sighed, apologized out loud, and pulled them off quickly. After changing into dry clothes myself, I wrapped Essie in a blanket and checked on the rest of the laundry. The other blanket had dried, so I folded it and placed it under her head, stacking some clothes beneath her feet for support. I tried to think about making turducken, a deboned chicken stuffed into a deboned duck and both placed inside a deboned turkey. But I realized my mind was still wandering too much. Shaking off the distraction, I grabbed one of the waterproof first aid kits. I carefully wiped away a bit of blood from the bruise on her forehead, applied antiseptic, and placed a bandage over it. ESB groaned again when I applied the antiseptic. I went back to my lava tube shelter and grabbed a handful of dried leaves and moss along with some small kindling I had cut up with my knife. I arranged rocks in a circle, then put the makings of a fire into a frying pan and went out on the sand, which is being heated by the now blazing hot sun. I opened my Swiss Army knife and used one of the magnifying glasses to concentrate the sun's rays onto the dried leaves and kindling. Within a few minutes, I had smoke, which I carefully blew on, then had a small fire going. I dumped the fire onto the circled rocks, then started adding increasingly larger pieces of wood until I had a nice fire going. I grabbed the cast iron grate I had taken from the galley and put it across the rocks, then put the pot of water on top of that. I ran back to the beach where I grabbed my crude spear. Using tape from the first aid kit, I taped a long, narrow filleting knife to the end of the spear, then weigh it out into the water. In about 10 minutes, I had speared a large fish. It is amazing what you can do when you have the proper equipment to work with. I cleaned the fish, then headed back to the fire. The water was just about to start boiling, so I added the fish along with salt and some other spices. Within 30 minutes, I had a nice fish broth soup ready, grabbed a mug and spoon, and took some of the broth and added fish, which I cut up into very small pieces. For the next hour or so, I fed SB little spoonfuls of the fish soup, each time saying to her, "Here, SB, you need to eat. Just a little more. Just a little more, SB." Interested in the building skills, Schley Fish filled out on hourless claims to strung it. Once I had finished, SB said, I ran back and grabbed the coffee pot I had taken from the boat and half filled it with water. I put the pot on the fire, then carefully added coffee to the soon boiling water. In just a few minutes, the coffee was ready. So I poured some into a mug and added just a little sugar. Usually, I drank my coffee black, but decided to splurge a little and was soon enjoying my first cup of coffee in over 6 months. I again checked to make sure SB was resting comfortably. And once I was confident I had done everything I could for her, I leaned back against the coconut tree. I finally had time to start thinking. Life's a "then you marry one" was one of my first thoughts. Life sucks was another thought, but not nearly as much as most of the women I know. Here, I was not thinking of the word sucks in a positive light. How the hell did I end up here? And what the hell was I going to do now? Somehow, I knew another woman was going to screw up my life, just as all the other women I had ever known had. I began to do something I seldom do. I began to reflect on my life. My name is Raymond Adams Jr. I almost can't help but laugh when I think of the word junior. I only met my dear old Poppy one time in my life, and we tried to kill each other that one time. Raymond Adams Sr. had spent 22 years in the Marine Corps when he met the woman who would be my mother. She was a young 21-year-old waitress when 40-year-old Master Sergeant Raymond Adams decided to stop at an IHOP in Wilmington, North Carolina to get something to eat. Dear old daddy was a confirmed bachelor. Well, actually, he was married, but married to the Marine Corps. But there was something about that young waitress, Vivian. They flirted throughout the meal, and he kept asking for her phone number, which she kept refusing to give him. Once he finished the meal, she brought his receipt back to him with her phone number written on it. They had their first date that night and another the next night. Raymond was stationed at nearby Cherry Point MCAST, so over the next month, they got to know each other better. Raymond had never met anyone he loved more than the Marine Corps. At least, not until he met Vivian. Within a month, they were married. Within another month, Vivian was pregnant. By all accounts, it was a difficult pregnancy, and Vivian was confined to bed for most of it. Raymond had just left for a week-long training exercise in Camp Leune when Vivian went into labor 3 months early. By the time they tracked Raymond down, he returned to the Naval Hospital at Cherry Point. Unfortunately, Vivian was dead. One of the nurses took Daddy to the intensive care unit where his 3PB son was struggling for life himself. Raymond took one look at the scrawny infant, did a military about-face, and drove over to his wife's sister's house in Wilmington. "I don't ever again want to see the little son of a who killed my wife," he told Rachel, his wife's older sister. The next day, he signed all the paperwork, turning guardianship of the son of a over to Rachel. Dear old Daddy had actually planned on retiring after I was born, so he could spend time with his new bride and son. After my mother died, I heard he stayed in the Marines for another 8 years before retiring as a master gunnery sergeant. Each month, Raymond would send Rachel a couple of hundred, thus fulfilling his complete parental duty and responsibilities. In 18 years, I never got a present for Christmas or my birthday, never received a card or letter, and never received a phone call from dear old Daddy. I will say this, Rachel tried, but she was a divorced mom and also had 3 daughters of her own, ages 8, 10, and 12. All 3 were active in sports and school activities, and Rachel was a typical soccer mom, but also struggling with a part-time job. She really didn't have the time to raise her sister's boy. She didn't turn me away, but a lot of times when I needed someone, well, she just wasn't there. And any disagreement between me and any of the 3 girls, well, you can probably figure out who won. Unfortunately for me, Daddy used those words about, "I don't ever again want to see the little son of a who killed my wife" in front of Rachel's daughters. Some of my earliest memories were of hearing those words repeated to me by one or more of my sisters. Usually, at least once each day, I was reminded that I was a son of a who killed his own mom. At first, I didn't even know what a son of a was, but soon they made sure I knew the meaning of those words. My dear sisters also made a point of making sure everyone in school knew my father thought I was a son of a who killed my own mom. I couldn't even tell you how many fights I had in school, how many times I was sent to detention, how many times I was suspended. I also had a juvenile arrest record that was almost legendary in Wilmington. Jacking or stealing cars for joyrides, shoplifting, fights, underage drinking, and the list could just go on and on. I dropped out of school at 16 and worked at a series of menial jobs in construction, always lying about my age. I was big enough, so no one ever questioned me. In the wintertime when construction work slowed down, well, I became rather good at B&E. That is breaking and entering and pawning televisions, microwaves, tools, and occasionally I would get really lucky and find some expensive jewelry. I never even came close to getting caught. But at the same time, it bothered me a little. Not enough to stop, but it still bothered me a little. For a couple of weeks, I even tried my hand at selling marijuana and other narcotics. I didn't use narcotics, but thought selling narcotics would be a good way to pick up some fast, easy money, until 2 guys I knew, also small-time dealers, were both shot to death. After that, I decided I would concentrate on construction work during spring, summer, and fall, then B&E during winter. I'm not sure how long things would have continued. But one day, a friend asked me to drive a car while he went inside to make a withdrawal. Unfortunately, it wasn't a bank. Yep, just before my 18th birthday, I hit the big time. I drove the getaway car for an armed robbery at a convenience store. Perhaps I should mention this convenience store just happened to be located 1 block from a Wilmington Police Department substation. A convenience store the cops usually stopped at either at the beginning or end of their shift. My friend timed it perfectly. There were a half-dozen uniformed cops inside when he ran in, gun in hand. 30 seconds after he ran inside, 3 cops walked outside, all pointing weapons at me. To this day, I don't know why the judge gave me a choice. Instead of just locking me away in prison, I think anyone who knew me probably figured that someday I would end up on an FBI Most Wanted poster. 2 years in prison or 4 years in the Marine Corps were my choices. I had been at the Marine Corps Recruit Depot, Parris Island, South Carolina, for 3 days when I reached the end of my patience. "Screw you," I told one of my drill instructors. My father, I was told, was about 6'5" in and weighed about 235 lbs. I wasn't that big, but I was still about an inch over 6'' and weighed 190. A little extra around the waist, but I was actually in better shape due to the construction work than most of the other recruits. My drill instructor was 5'7", and I doubt he weighed over 160 lb. I had him by close to 6 in and 30 lb. I never saw the first punch. 1 second I am screaming, "Screw you!" And the next I am flat on my back. I got up almost as fast as I went down and charged him, swinging wildly. I never saw the second punch either. This time it took a few more seconds to get to my feet, but I again ran at him and tried to throw a punch. I guess the third time is the charm. I at least saw his third punch. Couldn't do a damn thing about it, but at least I saw it. After the third punch, I was lying flat on my back for about 30 seconds, wondering where the mule was that just kicked me in my jaw. The drill instructor stood over me, looked down and said, "I can keep this up all day. What about you?" He wasn't even breathing hard. We both started laughing. Then he put his hand down to help me get up. I tried to knee him in the groin as I got up, but found myself being thrown about 10 ft through the air before again landing on my back. I rolled over, jumped up, and tried to tackle him like a football player would tackle an opposing player. His knee caught me in the pit of my stomach, and he clubbed me in the back of my head with both fists. This time, I stayed down, at least until they threw water in my face to wake me up. I had been in dozens, if not hundreds of fights. And while I didn't always win, at least the other guy knew he had been in a fight as well. He still wasn't even breathing hard. After he helped me up again, he started explaining how I was telegraphing every move I'd been trying to make, and showed me some throws and counterpunches. Within 2 weeks, he named me platoon guide, who was responsible for carrying the platoon's guide on, or flag. I was the only person in my platoon who graduated with the rank of private first class instead of just private. By the time I graduated, I had added more than an inch to my height and gained over 20 lb while dropping several inches off my waist. Boot camp was followed by advanced infantry training at Camp Loon, North Carolina, where I again was named platoon leader. And before I left, I was meritoriously promoted to Lance Corporal. Then I was given 2 weeks leave before reporting to my first duty station and training as a cook. Yes, cook. I barely knew how to boil water. But the Marine Corps determined I had all the qualifications needed to become a cook. I guess those few times I had scrambled eggs and made toast while growing up must have impressed someone at Parris Island. I really didn't have a home to go to since Rachel had officially kicked me out of her house. She had no choice really after she came home unexpectedly one day and found her youngest daughter, who by now was 24, naked on top of me. I was 16 at the time. Even though she was on top and obviously enthusiastically enjoying herself. She told her mom I forced her to have sex with me. It wasn't the first time I'd been betrayed by a woman, but this one really hurt. I thought she actually cared for me, since she had always been the nicest of my 3 older sisters. So no, I didn't have a home to go to. But I ended up in Wilmington anyway. I had only been back a few days when I met up with a guy I'd gone to school with. I didn't know it. But he had been at boot camp the same time I was, but in another company. He told me to go home and change into my uniform since he knew a couple of bars where a lot of ex-Marines hang out, and they would usually buy drinks for any Marines in uniform. I went to my motel room, changed clothes, and met him at the bar. Technically, we were both too young to buy drinks, but I could easily have passed for much older, unless the bartender asked to see some ID. Since other people were buying, they didn't ask. I think I was on my 5th or 6th beer when it happened. The entire time I'd been there, people kept coming up and shaking my hand, identifying themselves as former Marines. This really big guy walked up to me. He had to be 3 and taller than me, and probably outweighed me by 50 lb. By now I weighed 215 lbs and was a little over 6'2", so he was really big. He actually looked a little familiar, but I knew I'd never seen him before. "Are you Raymond Adams Jr.?" he asked. I answered that I was. He stuck his hand out, and I automatically started to shake it. "I am proud of you, son. I am Raymond Adams Sr. I am your daddy." I dropped my hand before we could shake. I could feel my blood turn icy cold. Never a present, never a card, never a phone call, never a letter. And now this son of a, the one who named me a son of a on the day I had been born, was trying to tell me he was proud of me. I hit him harder than I have ever hit anyone in my life. I hit him with 18 years worth of anger, resentment, hurt, pain, and suffering. In the words of an old Johnny Cash song about another fight between father and son, he went down just to my surprise, but came up with a roar. And soon we were doing our best to destroy each other. Also, like in that Johnny Cash song, I found out that he kicked like a mule and bit like a crocodile. Again, from that same song, we were kicking and gouging in the mud and the blood and the beer. It took about 10 men to separate us. But when we both heard police sirens, he went out the front door and I went out the back. I never saw him again. I managed to find my car and drove back to the motel. But when I was completely closed, my nose was broken. Both upper and lower lips were split open, and more than a few teeth were loose in my mouth. I cleaned myself up as best I could, changed clothes, and threw everything in my duffel bag. Checked out, then started driving. I didn't want to be in the motel room if the police came around asking questions. I didn't exactly have a very positive reputation with the Wilmington Police Department. I made it as far as the Welcome Center just across the state line in Virginia Beach. I pulled over to a deserted area, and much to my surprise, I started doing something I had not done since the 3rd or 4th grade. I cried. I don't know if I cried because I didn't kill him, or if I cried because I nearly did. I don't know if I cried because he nearly killed me, or because he didn't. I do know if those men had not stopped us, one of us would not have made it out of that bar alive. I still had over a week and a half before reporting to Shake and Bake School, so I rented a cheap motel in Virginia Beach. I spent most of those days just walking the beach and trying to avoid people. That part was fairly easy. Anyone who saw my face automatically turned away. A couple of people looked like they were going to be sick. By the time I reported in, most of the swelling was gone, and my face was just a combination of blue, black, and yellow. Everyone in the military calls it Shake and Bake School, but the official name is Basic Food Services Course, and it is taught at the U.S. Army Quartermaster School in Fort Lee, Virginia. Those dog faces, Army types, didn't know quite what to make of me with my face looking like it was. I discovered something about myself at Fort Lee that I would never have guessed. I loved cooking. The 6-month-long course was the most fun I had ever had with my clothes on. Yes, it was hard work, but I loved every minute of it. I graduated at the top of my class and was again promoted, this time to corporal. I was given the opportunity to take leave, but I turned that down and was soon on my way to Iraq. After my 13-month tour was over, I again received orders to Fort Lee, but this time to take the Food Service NCO, Non-Commissioned Officer course. I again graduated at the top of my class, and before leaving Fort Lee, received my 3rd stripe as a sergeant. After a few months at Camp Loon, I received orders for a 2nd tour of Iraq. During my first tour, I began taking classes and received my GED, which is equivalent to a high school diploma. I immediately started taking online courses in college. Towards the end of my 2nd tour, I received an associate degree in food services. The entire time I'd been in Iraq, I had never encountered any problems, never heard the so-called shot fired in anger. I found the Iraqi people I dealt with to be friendly, open, and genuinely glad we were there. I knew there were bad people there, but never had any dealings with them. That changed 2 weeks before my 2nd tour was to end. I only had 3 months left of my 4-year hitch and was trying to decide whether to re-enlist or try my hand as a civilian cook or chef. We had just finished a special lunch honoring a Marine sniper who had recorded his 150th confirmed kill. The sniper, Jonathan Wilson, nicknamed Showtime, was actually from my home state of North Carolina. So I took some time to meet him, and we ended up talking for nearly 30 minutes. Really funny guy who had some great stories to tell. He left the tent to get ready to leave on another mission and had been gone for about 15 minutes when it happened. I was listening to my MP3 player with earbuds in place, so I never heard the RPG, rocket-propelled grenade, that hit the mess tent. We had just finished cleaning up from lunch and were about to get ready for dinner when the RPG exploded in the mess tent. 1 minute, I was making a list of things I needed to get out of the large walk-in freezer in the mess tent. The next thing I knew, I was about 20 feet away. Where the force of the explosion threw me with, I found out later, a large piece of shrapnel in the back of my left shoulder. There were dozens of smaller pieces of shrapnel in my shoulder and back as well. My last conscious memory of a wreck was of my best friend who had been standing beside me. I saw his head rolling around on the floor of the mess tent. Not the rest of his body, just his head. Then oblivion claimed me. The next few months were, and still are, just a blur. Back stateside, I had 2 operations on my shoulder in 3 months. Then a 3rd surgery about 6 months after those. The 2 constants in my life were the pain pills they had to keep giving me for the excruciating pain, and images of my best friend's head rolling around on the floor. In between operations, I heard that Corporal Jonathan Wilson had been killed by that RPG that hit our mess tent. But when I tried to explain that he had left some 15 minutes earlier, I was told at first that I was simply confused. When I kept repeating that story, I was later visited by some high-ranking officers who informed me that if I continued to insist Wilson had left before the explosion, then I could be charged with making false statements under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Just forget that you ever saw, heard, or spoke to Wilson, I was ordered. And especially forget that he left before the explosion. James Corps had extended my enlistment while I was undergoing the operations and rehabilitation. But it eventually became apparent that I would never again be physically able to carry out my duties. My left arm and hand were continually tingling and almost numb, and I could not raise my left arm higher than my shoulder, and only then with almost blinding pain. One day the Marine Corps promoted me to Staff Sergeant, and the next week they gave me a medical discharge rated at 50% disabled. By now I was addicted to the pain pills I had to take. For most of the last year I spent in the hospital, I had not spent any money. I also had a huge amount of vacation days they paid cash for. Plus, while I was in Iraq, I hardly ever spent any money. So when I was discharged, I actually had a lot of money saved up. I spent the next 6 months drinking most of that up, plus buying narcotics from unsavory characters and getting in barroom brawls and compiling additional arrests for drunk and disorderly and fighting, even almost one-armed. I could more than handle myself most of the time. Every night before falling into a drunken slumber, I again saw my best friend's head rolling across the mess tent floor. All classic symptoms of post-traumatic stress syndrome, or PTSD. During that year, after most of my money was gone, I finally checked in at the nearest VA hospital in Wilmington. They took a number of x-rays of my shoulder and back. I apparently still had at least a half-dozen very small pieces of shrapnel inside me, including some near the nerve center in my shoulder. Scar tissue had formed around the sites of the previous surgeries, and that wasn't helping. The remaining pieces of shrapnel, plus the scar tissue, they told me, was what was causing the numbness and pain. So, I underwent my 4th operation. When I woke up, I could actually feel my fingers for the first time in more than a year. I was still in a lot of pain, but the doctors told me that would eventually stop if I kept up with my physical therapy. By this time, I was down to about 140 lb. Gaunt would probably be the correct word here. Of course, I was still addicted to painkillers, but I stopped drinking and eventually weaned myself off the pain pills. I also took classes at the VA center where I began dealing with my PTSD. In the 6 months following my 4th surgery, I joined a gym where I worked out almost every day and began each day with eggs, bacon, sausage, and biscuits and gravy instead of a bottle of vodka. In 6 months, I was back up to 195 lbs and was hired as a chef by a local restaurant. I was finally getting my life back together and earning quite a reputation as one of the top up-and-coming chefs on the East Coast. A year later, I was arrested for the brutal assault of a local state senator's daughter. According to the girl, who never actually saw her attacker's face since he was wearing a ski mask. He was about 6 tall, muscular, had a Marine Corps tattoo, and drank heavily the entire time. During her nearly 8-hour ordeal, she had been assaulted repeatedly and was beaten up a couple of times. She said he started choking her, then would start crying and apologize for what he was doing, then did it again. Obviously someone with issues, someone with emotional problems. So the police began looking for tall, muscular Marines or former Marines who drank a lot, had a tattoo and arrest records for drunk and disorderly. Someone who had emotional problems, perhaps suffering from PTSD. Guess who they found? I actually was not that worried at first. Yes, it was incredibly shocking to be arrested for the vicious assault. But I had been with someone else that night, a woman I met at the restaurant. She had actually picked me up, and I spent the entire night with her. Unfortunately, all I had was a first name and a description, as I was to find out much, much later. The first name was made up, and while she had read about the case and knew I was innocent, she was afraid to come forward since she was married. Another betrayal by another woman. When my public defender asked about DNA evidence, we were told the attacker had worn a condom each time, so there was no DNA available for analysis. Again, I found out later that was also a lie. There was semen. It had been analyzed, and the assistant district attorney trying the case knew I was innocent. But she needed a quick conviction. Another betrayal by another woman. The assistant DA had actually convinced the investigating officer to change her story about what she had found at the assault scene. Still another betrayal by yet another woman. Unable to mount an effective defense, I was convicted of assault, aggravated assault, sentenced to 10 years in the North Carolina State Penitentiary system. I suppose as far as prison life went, I had it a little easier than most. Because of my background as a cook in the military and as a civilian chef, I was assigned to the prison cafeteria. And actually, within a few months, I was all but running the place. I planned the menu, ordered ingredients, and supervised the actual food preparation. The food was so much better than what had been served in the past. The other inmates quickly put out word that if anyone bothered me, there would be hell to pay. After about a year and a half in prison, Victoria Peterson entered my life. Victoria was nearing the end of her junior year at the University of North Carolina, where she was pursuing a journalism degree. One day, one of her professors mentioned the Innocence Project, which is a group dedicated to getting wrongly accused and convicted men out of prison. Victoria volunteered and was assigned to review my case since I was appealing the conviction and maintaining my innocence. As Victoria began reading all the hundreds of pages of notes, she noticed a discrepancy. When the victim was initially interviewed, and in at least one follow-up interview, she stated her attacker had a Marine Corps tattoo, but it was on his forearm. My tattoo was on my upper left arm. The victim had also mentioned at least twice that while the attacker had very dark, tanned arms, his chest, stomach, and back were nearly white. Obviously, someone who worked outside but kept his shirt on most of the time. During my testimony, I said I went running nearly every day on the beach, just wearing shorts. I had Victoria check with some of the people I frequently went running with, and they found a group photo of us. And it was obvious I had a very dark tan all over. That photo had been taken 3 days before the assault. At some point, the woman I had been with that night contacted Victoria. Apparently, she heard about Victoria's trying to gather new evidence in the case. That woman had since gotten a divorce and signed a statement that I had been with her the entire night, and also agreed to testify in court. Based on those 3 pieces of evidence, Victoria finally got to talk to the victim herself. The victim stated that the investigating officer and the assistant DA spent hours and hours badgering her until she finally changed her story. The most incredible part of the story from the victim, though, was the fact there was semen available. The attacker had not used a condom. The victim even had semen in her hair. In fact, the investigating officer had collected a lot of DNA evidence, but then told the victim the crime lab had accidentally damaged it, so it was no longer usable. The only way they could get a conviction, she was told, was if she swore the attacker wore condoms during each attack. Incredibly enough, the police department still had samples of the semen, and when it was tested, it proved I was not the attacker. Gathering all the information and getting the semen tested had taken nearly 6 months. The actual hearing took less than 2 hours. I walked into court wearing shackles on my hands and feet and walked out a free man. The assistant DA, now the district attorney, had her law license revoked by the North Carolina Bar Association and was forced to resign. The investigating officer, who now worked for the DA, was fired. Legal charges were pending against both. The judge ordered that any record of my having been arrested and convicted be removed from my record. The legal term is expugned. I walked into court having served 1 year, 11 months, and 28 days of a 10-year sentence. I walked out with Victoria holding my hand. We spent that night, in fact, the next several weeks together. By now, Victoria was a senior in college with just a few more months to go to get her degree. She told me she was taking the pill. Within a month, she was pregnant. I can't really say I ever loved Victoria. Obviously, I was very grateful for her help in getting me out of prison and proving my innocence. And while I think she was in love with the idea of being in love with someone she had helped, I don't think she ever really loved me either. I had grown up without a father, and I simply could not think about making someone else go through what I had gone through. So, Victoria and I got married. Even though Victoria and I didn't really love each other, once Jonah was born, I was determined to make the marriage work. I can't even begin to tell you how much I loved Jonah. I became an absolute doting father and spoiled him constantly. I never wanted him to doubt for even a single second that I loved him. My biggest problem after getting released from prison was finding a job. Victoria and I moved to Charleston, South Carolina, and I applied for every position that came open in local restaurants. Unfortunately, even though the arrest and conviction had been removed from my records, enough people had heard about what happened, and no one would hire me. Apparently, a lot of people thought I must have done something, so they would not take a chance for any bad publicity. Finally, I hired on as a cook on freighters, making the run from Charleston to different ports in Europe or to unload, then load cargo to bring back to the States. The freighters weren't too picky about the reputation of their employees. Most crossings last a week to 10 days, then upwards to a week to unload and load, then another week to 10 days to get back. Sometimes I would be gone for as little as 3 weeks. Sometimes the trip could take well over a month. The pay was actually a lot higher than I could have earned in restaurants, and the meals were easier to prepare. Well, other than the pitching and yawing of a ship crossing the open ocean, crewmen on ships weren't used to high-quality fare. So when they tried my cooking, they were really impressed. I usually had at least 2 weeks back in Charleston before the next trip, so I spent as much time as possible with Victoria and Jonah. Victoria was working by now, so I spent most of my time with my son. Victoria and I were also suing the former DA and the county, plus the city of Wilmington and the police officer. That took nearly 2 years to resolve. Since my work schedule had me gone for a month at a time with only 2 weeks home in between, I gave Victoria a power of attorney to sign any documents related to the lawsuit while I was away. It was about 2 months after Jonah's second birthday when I arrived back at port after my longest single voyage, which was about 6 weeks. Victoria wasn't at the port to pick me up, and when I called home on her cell, there was no answer. I caught a taxi and went home. The house was vacant other than a letter lying on the kitchen table. In the letter, Victoria explained that after I left, she found out she was 3 weeks pregnant, and I wasn't the father. We had filed a $1.5 million lawsuit against the city and county, and she offered to settle out of court for $600,000. She had deposited the checks in our joint account, then promptly withdrew $550,000, leaving me with $50,000 to show for being illegally convicted and locked up for 2 years. She also said I would never find her and Jonah. She had taken my son, the ultimate betrayal. I spent the next 2 years in every dime I had, and was never able to find a trace of her or Jonah. Victoria's parents were dead. She had no brothers or sisters, and the only relative I knew about was a grandfather in a nursing home with Alzheimer's. I was now 33, with nothing to show for my life, except my pickup truck and my military disability pay. My love grew weary of struggle, worn down by sorrow and strife. Tired of endless labor, tired of being my wife. She took the light from my world, my pride, my laughter, my joy. She took the reason I lived for. She took my little boy. And this time, Lord, the road is steeper, a peak I may never scale. This isn't just another mountain. You've set me against a towering trail. Other than my tours of duty in Iraq, I had spent my entire life in either North or South Carolina. But I knew I had to get away. One of the shipping lines I regularly worked for also had a division in California. So, I moved to San Francisco, where I began working on the San Francisco-Tokyo run. These voyages lasted much longer than the ones in South Carolina, since the distances were much greater. I would usually be at sea for 6 weeks to 2 months. Some 9 months later, I was 1 month into my 4th cruise when the worst typhoon to hit the Pacific in 50 years sent the freighter I was on to the bottom of the ocean. I realized with something of a shock that hours had passed while I was remembering how every woman I had ever known had screwed up my life. I poured myself another cup of coffee. But no sugar this time. Yes, I regularly blamed even my mother. If only she hadn't died. Maybe my father wouldn't have branded me a son of Es, and I would have had a normal childhood. It was going to get dark in a couple of hours, so I heated up the soup and again spent nearly an hour feeding SB one little spoonful after another, then ate some myself. Damn good soup, if I do say so myself, even if it was made with fish. God, I was really starting to hate fish. Since it usually rained nearly every night, I gathered up everything I had taken off the boat and carried it to the lava tube I had claimed for my home, then returned and carried SB in her blanket there as well. Usually, I fell asleep as soon as it got dark. But this night, it took me hours to sleep. Every time I would close my eyes, I would see Esbai's luscious body in my mind. The next morning when I awoke, I was reminded of something. When the human body takes in food and water, it also produces waste products, both liquid and solid. After cutting up the sheets into strips, I cleaned Esby, put clean shorts on her, then took her soiled shorts to the beach and washed them. I speared another fish and again prepared soup, which I fed SB one spoonful at a time. Then I ate. I carried SB back to the beach where I propped her against the coconut tree and spent hours sitting beside her and slowly started talking to her. For the first 3 days, Esby was unconscious. For the first 3 days, I would spear a fish, fix soup, and feed her. I would have to clean her 2 or 3 times a day, then would spend hours talking to her unconscious form between meals. Because I had to keep her clean, I regularly got a very good look at her. All of her. And I knew more about her body than I had of any woman I had ever known. I realized to my growing consternation that while I was becoming very fond of this beautiful woman, I knew absolutely nothing about, not even her name. In fact, I didn't even know if she spoke English. The day I found her, I had actually been a little resentful of her suddenly showing up and disrupting my life. Now I almost couldn't remember what it had felt like to be by myself for those 6 months. On the 4th day, SB awoke for the first time. I had just finished feeding her. First, she groaned loudly. Then, I saw her eyes start fluttering. Finally, after a few minutes, she opened her eyes. Her eyes were unfocused for a minute, and she started glancing about almost in a panic. Knowing she had had a pretty severe concussion, I knew she couldn't move yet. So, I gently put my hands on her shoulder and began talking to her. "It's okay, Esby. It's okay. You are safe. You are on an island and you are safe. Nothing can hurt you here." She finally focused on me, then gave a little nod and a half smile. Then her eyes closed and she either fell asleep or back into unconsciousness. I was almost stunned by her incredible emerald green eyes. I could almost swear for those few minutes she looked directly at me that I was falling into the depths of those eyes. I cleaned her, then carried her back to the beach where I propped her back up against the old coconut tree. And I sat down beside her and held her hand while talking to her. That afternoon, she again awoke. She again panicked when she first woke up, and I again assured her that she was safe. She was on an island and nothing could hurt her. She looked at me, nodded, and then tried to speak. "Boat," she finally whispered. I was very relieved that at least she remembered that much, indicating the injury to her head perhaps was not too serious. It was damaged and sunk in the storm. "Matt," she said after a few minutes, and I realized this must be either a boyfriend or husband. "I'm sorry," I answered. "You were the only one on board." I saw her eyes begin to fill with tears before she fell back asleep. I gently wiped away the tears. The next day, she awoke just as I was getting ready to feed her. One moment, her eyes were closed. The next, They were looking directly at me. "Boat?" she again asked after I had assured her she was safe, and I again explained about her boat sinking and that I had barely gotten her off. "Matt?" she asked, and I again told her she had been the only one aboard. I again saw some tears but gently wiped them away. "Now you need to eat." I told her, "You've got to get your strength back." For the next 30 minutes or so, I fed her one spoonful at a time and kept making remarks like, "Come on, SB. Just a little more or a few more bites, SB." She never said a word, but her eyes never left my face. Finally, when I was finished, she said, "Good." It was good. Then she frowned a little before asking, "Why B? B, I understand the S, but why B?" It took me a few seconds to realize she was asking why I kept calling her SB. I explained how I had found her unconscious and had called her Sleeping Beauty at first, but that was too long, so I shortened it to SB. "My name is Sarah," she said as she grinned a little. "Okay, Sarah. Now you need to get some sleep," I suggested. She shook her head a little. "I think I like the way you say SB better," she offered, then fell asleep. I again talked to her as she was sleeping. That afternoon, Sarah woke up and stayed awake this time for over an hour. I spent 30 minutes feeding her. Then she started asking who I was and where we were. I told her my name, Rye, and explained that I had been a ship's cook. Only my ship had sunk some 6 months earlier. We had been blown way off course, so I don't really have any idea where we are other than somewhere in the South Pacific. I told her about the island for a while, then could see she was getting sleepy. "You need to rest," I advised her. Then told Sarah that I would carry her back to the cave so she could sleep. Almost as soon as I picked her up, Sarah fell asleep. However, when I carefully put her down, she woke up and grabbed my hand. "Thank you," she said, and squeezed my hand before falling back asleep. The next morning, Sarah woke up as I was cleaning her. She flushed bright red, but didn't say anything until after I had finished and helped her put on a clean pair of shorts. I again picked her up to carry her to the beach. But when she put one arm around my neck and rested her head against my shoulder, I stumbled and almost fell. After I put her against the coconut tree, she blushed, then asked how long I'd been taking care of her and cleaning her. I told her this was the 6th day she had been here, that I'd been feeding and taking care of her for 6 days. She had been looking down at the ground until I added, "Sarah, you don't have to worry. I mean, nothing has happened, Sarah. I swear." Grabbed my hand in both of hers, then lifted her head until she was staring into my eyes with an almost laser-like intensity. It felt like her incredible green eyes were penetrating into the depths of my soul. "I know, Ray. I've known since the first time I saw you after I woke up that I was safe, that you would never take advantage of me. I don't know if I've ever felt so safe before." Then she surprised me even more when she raised my hand to her lips and actually kissed the back of my hand. "Yes. Yes. Well, I think I need to get us a fish and cook something." I kind of bumbled along. It was obvious I was more than a little flustered. I reclaimed my hand, then ran down to the shore, then had to stop and return to the cave to get my spear and run back. As I glanced over at Sarah, I could see that she was grinning at me. It didn't take long to spear a fish, so I quickly cleaned it and carried the fillets back over to the fire where SB was waiting. The previous night, I had taken a coconut and placed it in the coals. After draining the milk out, I opened the shell and used my knife to try to chop up the inside flesh as fine as I could. Then wet the fish with salt water and used the shredded coconut to coat each side. I placed the grate across the fire I'd already started, and before long had 2 grilled fillets. I handed Sarah her fish on a plate and with a fork and knife. But she looked at me for a minute, then grinned. "I think I like it better when you feed me," she said. For some reason, I could feel my face blushing. But I stopped eating and took her fork and started feeding Sarah. After she had eaten her fill, I finished mine. When I looked at Sarah, I could see her eyes were starting to droop a little. She had now been awake for something like 3 hours. I had done most of the talking, and that was about food or the island itself. She would occasionally ask questions about my time as a cook, but never asked any personal questions and did not volunteer anything about herself. "Come on, SB," I grinned. "That's probably enough excitement for one morning. It's time you got some sleep," I told her. Sarah insisted that I sit beside her and hold her hand so she could fall asleep. Within just minutes of taking my hand, she was in a deep slumber. I hesitated for a minute, then carefully leaned over and kissed her forehead away from the bruise, which still looked pretty bad. The swelling was gone, but the colors, a combination of blue, black, and yellow, were still vivid. As I kissed her forehead, she actually smiled a little in her sleep and squeezed my hand. Sarah slept most of the day. Apparently, just the few hours she had been awake were almost more than she could take. I had to try to remember to make sure she got plenty of rest. When she finally woke up, it was getting dark and I had been waiting to feed her. I had soup ready again, but had added coconut to the broth along with fish. I fed her 1 spoonful at a time, and Sarah dutifully opened her mouth each time I would say, "Just a little more, SB, just a little more," and would grin almost every time I called her SB. Sarah fell asleep as I was carrying her back to the cave, but again woke up when I put her down. She again grabbed my hand and said, "Thank you." But this time, she also kissed my hand for the 2nd time before falling back asleep, as much as I wanted to. This time, I did not kiss her forehead. I just sat beside her until it was completely dark, trying to memorize every detail of her beautiful face. A few days earlier, I had been concerned when I realized that I was actually growing fond of her. Now, it was very troublesome to me that fond might not be the right word, and every woman I had ever known had betrayed me. The next morning, day 7, Sarah again woke up as I was cleaning her. But this time, she did not blush. After putting on a clean pair of shorts, I picked up her and started walking to the beach. But she told me to stop once we left the cave. "I want to walk a little," she said. I carefully stood her up, but continued to keep one arm around her back. She staggered a little, but immediately grabbed my other arm when I raised it in front of her. The top of her head barely came to my chest. About 5'4" in, I thought. Taking very small steps, we slowly made our way to the beach. I again speared and grilled a fish, then had to feed her at her insistence. After eating, Sarah almost immediately fell asleep, but not before grabbing my hand again and kissing it. Sarah only slept about 8 hours this time, so it was still afternoon. I had prepared more soup, so I fed her. Then Sarah insisted on walking some more. Leaning a lot on me, she took me down to the water's edge, then out into the water to about her knee level. We probably spent more time in the water than we should have, but it was obvious Sarah was really enjoying herself. The cove was really beautiful. When we started walking back, Sarah started really dragging her feet. So I knew she was a lot more tired than she had let on. I finally just picked her up again, but this time she wrapped both arms around my neck and rested her head in the hollow between my shoulder and neck. Once we were back in the shade, we both had a little more fish soup. There was still plenty of daylight left. But I knew how tired she was, and she did not protest when I picked her up and carried her back to the cave again. She grabbed my hand and kissed it before falling asleep. Every night, I had been sleeping about 5 or 6 feet away from Sarah towards the entrance of the cave. When I woke up on day 8, Sarah's head was resting on my shoulder and one arm was thrown across my chest. I had both arms around her. I tried to ease out from under her, but she woke up, then looked at me with a big smile. "Good morning," she said, then immediately blushed. "I really have to go to the bathroom." One of the first things I had done on the island was build a small slit trench latrine or pit toilet. Since the only tools I had to dig the latrine with were some limbs I had cut off trees. It was very simple. It was only about 3 ft deep, about 2 feet across, and about 6 ft long. To use it, you put a foot on either side, then squatted down over the trench, usually on your knees, and well, let go. I usually use seaweed to wipe, since when I arrived at the island, I had nothing else. At least now I had seaweed and cloth from the sheets and towels I had taken off the boat. I knew Sarah was still too unsteady on her feet to use it by herself. So I helped her take her shorts off, then helped her spread her legs over the trench. I still had to kneel beside her to steady her, but at least I looked away. After Sarah finished, she had to ask for my help in wiping. I helped her stand up, then helped Sarah put her shorts back on. 2 weeks ago, I could never have imagined doing that in front of anyone, she admitted while I was helping her walk back. But I guess you have already seen everything. Selfish. Sarah was nearly walking without any assistance, just lightly keeping one hand on my arm. A couple of times she stopped, and I could tell she was a little dizzy. But that feeling seemed to pass, and she resumed walking. We walked all the way to the beach, and I left Sarah by the coconut tree while I ran for my spear. After taking a large fish, I turned around, and Sarah had walked down to the water by herself. She was swaying a little from side to side, but seemed to be doing very well. I cleaned the fish, then threw the guts and remnants into the water for other fish to eat. I washed off the fillets in the ocean. Then Sarah put her hand on my shoulder to steady herself as we walked back. At one point, she almost fell down as a dizzy spell hit her, but I managed to grab her before she could fall. I picked her up and carried her the rest of the way, then went back to get the fish I had dropped on the sand, then cleaned it in the water again. Soon, we had grilled fish, and I could tell how tired Sarah was. So, when she asked me to feed her, I didn't hesitate. I had just finished eating, and we were still sitting shoulder to shoulder when Sarah once again surprised me. She leaned over and kissed me on the lips. I was so surprised, I didn't do anything at first. Then, when I felt her tongue against my lips, well, I did what any normal, all-American male would do. I kissed back. We really hadn't kissed that long before I realized how wrong this was. I broke the kiss, then gently pushed her away a little. "Sarah, this is wrong. You still have a concussion and aren't thinking clearly." I started to explain. She quickly brought a hand up and pressed it against my lips. I had thought she might be upset that I had broken off the kiss, but instead she smiled and said, "See? I told you I was perfectly safe with you." She grabbed my hand and snuggled against my side and was soon asleep, leaving me wondering what the hell I was going to do. It had really taken all my willpower to break off the kiss, and I didn't know if I could do it again. Kissing Sarah had felt more right, more natural than with any other woman I had ever kissed. I think that was when I finally realized that I was actually in love with Sarah. But every woman I had ever known had betrayed me. How long before Sarah did also? I knew if we were ever rescued from this island, any misplaced feeling of gratitude she had for me would soon disappear. She would return to her world of money and privilege. And what world would I return to? It would have been better for me if SB had never shown up. Sarah slept for about 4 hours before she woke up. In the meantime, I had speared another fish and had just started the soup. Sarah wasn't hungry yet, so when she asked, I agreed to let her walk some more. This time, she grabbed my hand as we were walking. We again walked down to the shore. Then Sarah eased herself down into the warm water before dunking her head under. I haven't washed my hair in over a week, she complained as she tried running her fingers through her thick, wet hair. It feels so sticky and yucky. I then remembered the other things I had taken off the boat. Oh, I forgot, I started to say. But I did manage to grab several bars of soap and a bottle of shampoo. And you were just now telling me, she yelled, then started splashing water on me while grinning. Right now, I would kill to be able to take a bath and wash my hair. And if you know what's good for you, then you better get me that soap and shampoo now. Laughed. Then told her I would be right back. I grabbed the soap and shampoo, then 2 of the biggest pots. I stopped at the natural spring where we got our drinking water and filled both pots with fresh water, then carried everything down to the beach. When I handed Sarah the shampoo, she asked if I would wash her hair for her. So I sat down in the water, and she knelt in front of me with her back to me. Her hair was already wet, so I squeezed some shampoo on my hand and started washing her hair. I had never washed a woman's hair before, but soon discovered that I loved the feel of her long hair in my hands. Your hair is so beautiful, I remarked at one point after I had washed all the soap off with seawater, then couldn't resist adding, and I couldn't help but notice that you are a natural redhead. When I had been cleaning her, I'd noticed that her hair had started growing back in down there. Sarah's face flushed nearly as red as her hair, but she didn't say anything for a minute or two. To tell you the truth, she admitted after a minute, it's driving me crazy. It itches so much. And if you now tell me you also got my razor and shaving cream and didn't tell me, I will kill you. He didn't say anything. Sarah finally turned around, and as soon as she saw my face, she knew. You have my razor and didn't tell me. She demanded, why, you jackass. She then launched herself at me, pushing me backward. I was already sitting down, so my head immediately went underwater. I came up sputtering and laughing, and Sarah was laughing as well. I really couldn't do anything since I was still worried about Sarah's concussion. So, when she pushed my head under again, the only thing I could do was tickle her a little. Before I could stop her, Sarah threw both arms around my neck and she was kissing me again. Soon, my tongue was deep in her mouth, and I didn't think I would be able to resist this beautiful woman again. About that time, a large wave broke directly on top of us, and that finally broke the kiss and the passion I was feeling. Look, SB, I don't know what to say, but I just don't think when Sarah interrupted me. Yes, yes, yes. I know you think my brains are scrambled, she said. I'll let you get by one more time, but you better get used to the fact that sometime in the next couple of days, I am going to screw your brains out. Sarah had a big grin on her face as she said that, but the grin slowly eased off as she realized I wasn't grinning. What is it, Ray? What's wrong? She finally asked. Long story, SB. Very long story. I responded after a minute or two. I realized I'd forgotten to get a towel for her hair. So I told her I would get a towel while she bathed, then started walking off. I had barely taken 2 steps when something wet hit me in the back of the head before it fell to the beach. When I looked down, I saw it was her t-shirt. Before I could take another 2 steps, something went sailing past my right ear. It was her shorts. I now knew the most beautiful woman I have ever known. And a woman who had just told me she wanted to screw my brains out was as naked as the day she was born. I stood there for a minute or two, then kept walking. It took just about all the willpower I had, but I did not turn around. I knew if I did turn around, I would not be able to resist her again. I don't know how long Sarah stood there watching me walk away from her. When I returned about 15 minutes later, Sarah had apparently finished washing since she was now sitting in water that was up to her chin. I dropped off the towel and some clean clothes for her, then walked back to the shade of the coconut tree where I put some soup in 2 bowls. Before long, Sarah joined me carrying her wet clothes in the 2 now empty pots. I assumed she used the fresh water to wash the salt water out of her hair. We didn't say anything to each other. I started eating, but Sarah just sat down looking at me. I finally sighed, then sat down beside her and started feeding her spoonfuls of soup. She ate every bite. Then I finished my bowl. This time, rather than sit down beside me to sleep, Sarah sat in my lap and put her head against my shoulder. Despite myself, I began running my fingers through her long red hair. Before long, she was asleep, leaving me more confused than ever. She slept another 4 or 5 hours, so when she woke up, there was another hour or 2 of daylight left. She asked if we could walk some more, so we walked together, hand in hand, until it was nearly dark. Neither of us was hungry, and I could tell Sarah was getting tired again. So I just picked her up and carried her back to the cave. When I woke up the next morning, day 9, she was again sleeping with her head on my shoulder, tightly pressed against me, and with an arm thrown across my chest and a leg crossed over my legs. I was again holding her with both arms. Despite what I had told myself, I kissed her forehead. The bruise on her head was actually looking a lot better. Sarah woke up, looked deeply into my eyes for a few seconds, and then kissed me on the cheek. "I need to use the bathroom again," she said. So I helped her walk to the latrine, where she was by now steady enough to take care of herself. We barely exchanged a word all morning. After eating and walking for several hours, Sarah slept until late afternoon. She again slept sitting in my lap with her head against my shoulder. When she woke up, I told her I needed to spear another fish and got to my feet. I had just started to walk off when she grabbed my hand and spun me around. "What?" I asked it. "Rye," she demanded. "I know you want to. I know you want me. What is wrong? What did I do?" "It's not what you did, SB. It's what you were going to do if we are ever rescued." I took a deep breath, then said what I had been thinking about for the past week. "Sarah, you are the most beautiful woman I have ever known, but I am just a cook." "Just a cook," I said, then hesitated a minute before adding, "You are a rich man's fantasy, a rich man's plaything. I can't buy you yachts. I can't buy you expensive toys. I can't buy you cars or houses. Hell, I couldn't even afford to take you to some of the expensive restaurants you probably are used to going to. If we ever get off this island, then you are going to forget all about me and find yourself some rich guy again. All I will have been is a diversion, just someone to pass the time with. Someone you will probably make jokes about with your rich friends. Let me tell you about this idiot who thought he was in love with me and thought I could fall in love with some poor cook." Her face had been growing steadily redder as I spoke, and it wasn't from embarrassment. After I finished, it took her about 30 seconds to explode. I'd always heard about the fiery temper of redheads, but this was the first time I have ever experienced it firsthand. "Rich man's fantasy, rich man's plaything," she started yelling. You are the single most arrogant, judgmental, chauvinistic scum-sucker I have ever met. I bought that yacht with my money. I bought my mansion in Beverly Hills with my money. I bought my home in Vail, my home in Palm Springs, my condo in New York, and my condo in Miami with my money. I bought the Bentleys I keep at each with my money. I bought my private jet with my money. You honestly don't know who I am, do you? She asked. I kept waiting for you to say something, but you honestly don't know, do you? I shook my head. Tell me, you chauvinistic scum-sucker. Have you ever heard the name Sarah Sullivan before? I thought, but finally had to shake my head again. It seemed like I had heard the name, but couldn't think when or where. Oh, great. I am not only stranded on an island with a chauvinistic scum-sucker, but apparently a stupid chauvinistic scum-sucker at that. I earned over $260 million last year from concerts and record sales. You jerk. After taxes, expenses, and everything else, I cleared over $90 million last year. I have had more #1 records than any recording artist in the last 10 years. You dumbass. I have won every recording artist award, including an Academy Award for the soundtrack for a movie. You dumbass. I can't believe I thought I was falling in love with such a complete idiot. It is too bad your parents didn't teach you some manners, you. You are just a miserable, stupid son of a Sarah. Later told me she honestly thought she had crossed the line at that point, saying that despite my heavy tan, my face turned white as a sheet. She was actually afraid, but just for a second or two. She said that when I did respond, she could barely hear what I was saying. Yes, SB, you are probably right. My parents should have taught me some manners. Unfortunately, my father took one look at me, lying in the intensive care unit after being born 3 months premature, then left. He told my mother's sister, I never again want to see the little son of a who killed my wife, and left. Yeah, I'm just a stupid son of a you and my daddy at least agree on that fact. I quickly turned away and started walking. Sarah said my words, and the incredible anguish she heard in my voice all but paralyzed her for several minutes. By the time she finally recovered, I was gone and it was getting dark. She followed my footprints as long as she could, but soon it was too dark for that, and the moon hadn't come up yet. As much as I've talked about the island, I really haven't described it very well yet. Imagine standing in the middle of a cove with your back to the sea and facing the beach just in front of you. About a mile ahead of you are the towering remnants of what was once a volcano. At that point, the outer wall of the cone is about 2,000 feet high and incredibly steep. If you started slowly turning left, the outer wall gradually decreases in height until by the time you're almost back to the cove, and the walls are only about 400 feet high. It is also much less steep, and I have climbed those walls several times trying to spot ships or aircraft. If while looking at the highest point, you had instead turned right, the drop-off in height is far more dramatic. Within a couple hundred feet, the walls are only about 1,000 feet high. Then that gradually lessens until you reach the beach, where the wall is only about 50 feet high. One side at some point in geological history blew out, leaving the inside of the volcano or caldera open to the ocean. That opening is only about 100 feet wide, and coral reefs fill the space between. At low tide, the water is only a foot or so above the reefs, while at high tide, the water is about 6 tiers above the coral. The beach itself is basically a C-shaped strip of sand, about half a mile wide and perhaps a 4 mile from the reef to the beach. The caldera is not a perfect circle since it is much wider than it is deep. From the beach to the highest point is about a mile, while from left to right, it is perhaps a 1.5 miles wide. The shady spot where Sarah spends most of her time is just to the left of the beach, while the lava tube or cave is perhaps a 4-mile from that, against the sides of the volcano. Because it is a fairly small island, there aren't that many places to go. Even so, it took Sarah 2 hours to find me, and she probably wouldn't have found me then if it hadn't been a brilliant moonlight night. Once the moon came up, I was sitting down with my knees crossed in front of me and didn't even hear her walk up. I didn't know Sarah was there until she knelt down beside me and put an arm across my right shoulder and rested her head on my left shoulder. "Rai, I am so sorry for what I said," she began. "If you want me to leave you alone, I will. If you want to talk, then I'll listen. If you just want me to sit beside you for the rest of the night, then I'll do that also. Please believe me, Ray. I am so sorry. Please, won't you talk to me?" I didn't say anything for a few minutes, then started. "So, you're supposed to be a singer?" I asked, "and apparently a pretty good one." "Some people have said so," she answered with a small smile. God, she is beautiful when she's not smiling. "But when she is smiling, I'm sorry that I don't think I've heard you sing, Sarah," I answered. "I rarely listen to the radio and on my MP3 player. I don't think I had any song newer than about 20 years old, and most of those are country." "It's okay, Ray. Maybe if you would like, I could sing something for you." "Spee," she smiled. "Have you ever heard of a singer and songwriter named Matt?" I inquired. No, I don't think so," she answered. "Long before I was born, he wrote and recorded a song that almost line for line describes my life. In fact, the only line that is not correct is the first line. My mother died in a hospital in North Carolina, not in the desert. The name of the song is "You Gave Me an Uphill Battle." "Would you like to hear it?" I asked. When she nodded her head, I halfway sang, halfway recited the lines I had memorized so well. "Born in the fire of the desert, my mother was lost, giving me life. My father, cold and distant, held me to blame for his wife. Lord, I've walked through shadows, paying for what I haven't done. Each trial a mountain before me, and I've climbed them one by one. But this time, Lord, the road is steeper, a peak I may never scale. No longer just another struggle. This time it's an endless trail." She grew weary of the burdens, the sorrow, the hardship, the fight. Tired of giving and getting nothing. Tired of being my wife. She took the light from my world, my pride, my laughter, my joy. She stole the reason I lived for. She took my little boy. And this time, Lord, the road is steeper. A peak I may never scale. No longer just another struggle. This time it's an endless trail. By the time I finished, we were both crying. Then Sarah very gently put her arms around me and sat in my lap, with her head resting against my chest. "Your ex-wife took your son away from you?" she asked, and I nodded yes through my tears. How long ago?" "It's been almost 3 years now." "Jonah will soon be 5, I answered. "I haven't seen my son in almost 3 years. Hate her for doing that," she guessed. "It's complicated," I answered. "But yes, at times I hate her, and at other times I am still grateful to her. If it weren't for Victoria, my ex-wife, I would still be in prison. I would still be locked up and would have never had a son at all." "The song said you were in prison for something you never done." I nodded. "Yes. What happened? What were you in prison for? If you don't mind my asking." I didn't answer for several minutes. I served 2 years. 2 years of a 10-year sentence for assault. Combating as soon as I said the words assault, Sarah began shaking her head. "Ray, I may not know you that well yet, But I absolutely know that you could never have forced yourself on a woman. Not after being here alone with you for these past days. I could never have fallen in love with a man who would do that. And I do love you, Ray. Not just words, I do love you. Do you want to tell me what happened? I understand if you don't want to talk about it. But Ray, please believe me when I say this. I do love you. I barely know you yet. I love you more than anyone I've ever known. I couldn't really explain why I was arrested in the first place, without explaining that the DA was looking for a Marine or ex-Marine with emotional problems, and someone with a history of alcohol and narcotic abuse and frequent arrests for fighting. And I couldn't explain that without explaining about my time in the Marine Corps getting wounded and the constant pain I was in for so long. And I couldn't explain that without explaining why I joined the Marines in the first place. Having a choice of 2 years in jail or 4 years in the Marines. That decision couldn't be explained without telling her about my years growing up with my aunt and 3 older sisters who made my life a living hell. And about the youngest of those girls who first seduced me when she was 22 and I was only 14. Then, after being caught by her mother, telling her mother I forced her to have sex with me, of living on the streets for 2 years, supporting myself any way I could. Not always in legal ways. And finally, I couldn't tell her why I was living with my mother's sister without explaining about dear old daddy abandoning me after I was born. I talked nearly all night long. Occasionally, Sarah would ask a question, but mostly she just sat in my lap with her arms around me. Sometimes she would give me a little kiss. A few times she got really, really angry. But mostly she listened. The angriest she got was when I told her about the assistant district attorney. The then DA was retiring, and the assistant DA had announced she was running for his office. She really needed a quick arrest and conviction on a high-profile case, and the assault of a local state senator's daughter was definitely high profile. All the assistant DA needed was someone to pin the crime on, and she wasn't above fabricating or withholding evidence to ensure she got that conviction. Rye, she finally said as dawn was getting near, you have had just about the worst childhood I have ever heard about. I think most people, if they went through what you went through, would hate the whole world, and especially women. How in the world are you so normal? I thought for a few minutes before I turned to her with a crooked grin. There are actually 2 answers to that question. The first is that the Marine Corps helped me channel that anger at first, turn it towards something constructive rather than destructive. Then the Marines replaced that anger by showing me something that I absolutely love to do, which is cook. I had barely boiled water before, but found myself becoming passionate about cooking. That was the first answer to your question. The second answer may be a little more difficult for you to accept. Who said, I am normal. I have fallen in love with you, haven't I? God help me, I have fallen in love with you. I kissed Sarah instead of Sarah kissing me. The kiss itself wasn't necessarily that long, nor even that passionate. More a touching of the heart between 2 people with a promise of what would come after. I don't think I have ever felt a kiss touch my soul the way that kiss did. And I think Sarah felt it as well. Wow, she said with a beautiful smile. That was almost enough to make me forget you just said you weren't normal, because you have fallen in love with me. Maybe we should try it again. Kissed me, and I kissed back. This kiss was a little longer, a little more passionate, but rather than just feel it below my belt, I felt it in my head, heart, toes, and everything else. Yes, including below my belt. After we broke that kiss, I really looked around me for the first time all night. I was shocked to see the sun starting to come up. Oh my God, I blurted out. I've kept you up all night, and you still have a concussion, and your little brains are still scrambled. You need to sleep. You need to rest. Sarah started laughing. It's okay, Ray. I feel fine. In fact, right at this moment, I feel better than I have ever felt in my life. But I do like the thought of lying down beside you and sleeping. That is sleeping. Afterward. And then Sarah kissed me again. And this time, it was definitely passionate, with our tongues providing promises of what was to come. We both finally stood up and Sarah assured me she could walk on her own. So we headed back hand in hand. Our path led to the beach, where I noticed the towel she had used the day before still lying in the sand beside the shampoo and soap. Let's go to the water, Ray, she said. When I hesitated, thinking she might be too tired, she cut me off. Yesterday you washed my hair. Today I want to wash yours. Reluctantly, I sat in the shallow water while she knelt behind me. As she poured water over my head, I removed my shirt. Sarah gasped at the scars on my shoulder. I usually didn't bother covering them, but since rescuing Sarah from the wreck, I had kept a shirt on. Victoria, my ex-wife, hated seeing them and always insisted I wear a t-shirt at the beach. Sarah touched them gently, her fingers tracing the rough edges. "Oh, Ray," she whispered, her eyes filled with emotion. "I'm so sorry for everything you've been through." After a moment, she poured water over my hair and massaged shampoo into my scalp. Her touch was soothing, and I leaned back against her. She even helped trim my short beard as best she could. When she was done, she dried my hair and smiled. "Now," she said softly, "cry me to the cave." She rested her head against my shoulder. The warmth of the morning sun and the quiet rhythm of the waves surrounded us. Later, as we sat on the beach, I asked, "So what brings a world-famous singer to a yacht in the middle of the Pacific?" Then explained how she had just finished a worldwide tour, 30 different countries, over 300 concerts in 250 days. She said during the last month or two of the tour, she noticed she was having trouble hitting some of the high notes. So she went in for an exam. My vocal cords were strained, and I actually had some polyps growing on them. She said the doctors removed the polyp, suggested, in fact, ordered no more singing for at least 6 months. Then they would see if she could resume her career. Matt was both my husband and manager. He was also an accomplished sailor. The fact is, during the last 2 years, we had really struggled in our marriage. We both thought this would be a way of reconnecting, of bringing our marriage back together by being together on an extended sailing trip. Unfortunately, halfway through, we both realized something. While we were always going to remain friends, we really didn't love each other anymore. Not the way a husband and wife should. When we got back, we were going to file for divorce. Matt would still be my manager, but wouldn't go on tours with me as often as he used to. We would still be friends with benefits when we needed it. But we both realized that the marriage was really over. He would also have the opportunity to pursue other interests. We had been married for over 10 years, but he never really accepted being Mr. Sullivan. Sullivan was my maiden name, and I kept it after we were married since I had already had a couple of hit records before he started managing my career. Then that damn hurricane or typhoon, or whatever the hell they call it here, had to hit. Matt was a good man, Ray. He was really a good man. Sarah started crying. Maybe we were no longer in love with each other. But I will always love him. Part of me will always love him. I took Sarah in my arms and held her tightly until the tears subsided. "What about you, Rai? Did you never hear from your father again?" she asked. I had not told Sarah about the one and only time I met my father and the fight that followed that meeting. I slowly told that story. When I finished, Sarah asked the question I was hoping she would not ask. "And you never heard from him again?" "He never tried to contact you after that?" she asked. I think it was about 10 minutes before I could answer. Sarah told me my face turned white again before I started talking. About 2 weeks later, he took a pistol and put it in his mouth and blew his brains out. I finally choked out. And then, for some reason, I started crying. The man I hated more than anyone on earth killed himself. And now I was crying. This time, Sarah held me and kept telling me, "It wasn't your fault, Ray. It wasn't your fault, Ray. I've never told this to anyone except Matt. And it took me 5 years to even tell him. But will you listen?" I nodded, my eyes filled with tears. I had an uncle, my father's brother, who I adored. He was always funny, always had a gift for me, and always knew how to make me laugh. But one night, everything changed. He had been drinking with my father, and after my father went to bed, my uncle came to my room to give me a small gift. I was already in bed since it was late. I hugged him, and he started to leave. Then he hesitated. He came back saying he wanted to say goodnight, but something about him felt different. His expression changed. He crossed the line that night, and no matter how much I protested, he didn't stop. Afterward, he cried and begged me not to tell my father. I never did, but from that night on, I avoided him, leaving the house whenever he visited, locking myself in my room, refusing any more gifts. 6 months later, he took his own life. At his funeral, I couldn't cry. All I could feel was the weight of what he had done. When I got back home that day, I saw some of the gifts he had bought for me over the years. Then I started crying. I realized that as much as I hated him, and believe me, I hated him for what he had done to me, that part of me still loved him. As much as you hate your father, and you have every right to hate what he did to you, there is still that little boy inside you that needed and loved his daddy. As I realized just how right Sarah was. Well, I wasn't just crying, I was sobbing. Uncontrollable tears that racked my body. Sarah held me throughout, and I was clinging to her like, well, a man who has jumped overboard a sinking ship will cling to a life preserver. Sarah was my life preserver. Later that evening, she again led me down to the water again, removed my shorts and her top and shorts, and we washed each other. She again gave me a BJ. When we went back to our cave, I must have brought her to half a dozen climaxes. We again fell asleep with Sarah on top of me. I awoke on day 11 with the most incredible feeling. Sarah was giving me a BJ. After breakfast, we made love again. In the afterglow, I remember thinking, how is it possible to think you love someone with every fiber of your being and then realize that you love them even more now? How can you think it is impossible to love someone more than you do? Then realize your love has grown 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times. Is there no limit to the love you can feel for another person? We walked down to the beach again, neither bothering with clothes. After playing in the water and with each other for about 30 minutes, Sarah blushed and asked if I would shave her. I pretended to examine her face, then said, "Well, you're starting to get a mustache." She laughed out loud, then pushed my head underwater. I hurried back to the cave and grabbed Sarah's razor and shaving cream. She laid down on a towel at the water's edge, trusting me to do something I had never done before. Give her a careful shave. I took my time, moving slowly and making sure to be precise. When I was finished, I rinsed away the remaining shaving cream with seawater. Afterward, Sarah insisted on shaving me as well. She used the scissors on my Swiss Army knife to trim my beard before lathering my face and carefully shaving me smooth. You know, "You aren't battle looking for someone so old," she said. I smacked her butt, making her yelp. I started to get up, but Sarah stopped me. "I didn't say I was through shaving you," she declared as she blushed. I didn't understand at first. I mean, she had already shaved my face, so what else? It wasn't until she pushed me down on the sand and began using the scissors to trim me down there. I understood. I had never shaved down there before. By the time she lathered me up, I was already as excited and remained so for the 15 or 20 minutes it took her to complete the job. She rinsed me off with seawater, then gave me a fantastic BJ. We must have made love 6 or 7 times that day before finally falling asleep that night. The next morning, day 12, we made love as soon as we woke up. Then again after breakfast, and again a couple of hours later. During the afternoon, we made love twice more. Later that day, when Sarah asked the question I had refused to let myself think about, I tried to hide my feelings, but she saw my quick grimace. "Don't you want to be rescued, Rye?" she asked. Obviously, her previous question had been to inquire if I thought we would ever be found. Sarah said Matt had activated an emergency beacon on the boat, but she wasn't sure how long it stayed active before the incoming sea shorted out the batteries on the boat. "You have already rescued me, Sarah, with your love. I was lost and alone, and you rescued me," I said. "You gave me something I thought I could never feel again. The love of another person. You too, Ray. Don't ever doubt that. But what if something happens? What if one of us gets sick or injured?" she asked. Then she smiled so beautifully before adding, "Of course, you will probably be the one to get sick since you are so old. Aren't you about ready to start drawing Social Security now?" I stuck my tongue out at her before reminding her I was only 3 years older than she was, since she had already told me she was 31. "Oh, sorry. You just seem so much older since you can't keep up with me at night." This time I growled at Sarah before reminding her that last night, after I had brought her to about a dozen climaxes, she had been the one begging me to stop. "Yes, I want to be rescued too, SB," I told her. "But right now, I am happier than I've ever been, and I'm afraid of what will happen in the future. I love you, Sarah, but we are worlds apart, and I'm scared. Really scared that your feelings will change once we get back to civilization." This time her face flushed red, but not with embarrassment. I had only seen her Irish temper flare once before, but now I got to see it again. My God, Ray, do you think I am that shallow? You think our time together on this island means nothing to me? I love you, you damn idiot. And I will always love you whether we are here or anywhere else. If you don't shut up and kiss me now, then I'll start slapping you, and I may not be able to stop. What else could I do? I kissed her. Then we made love again. Sarah returned to the topic of rescue afterwards. I was serious. Rye, about what if one of us gets hurt? What would we do then? Or since we are not exactly being very careful, what if one of us gets pregnant? I couldn't help it. I laughed out loud. Well, I suppose that would depend on which one of us got pregnant, I said as her eyes narrowed again, and she started glaring at me for making fun of her statement. Now, if it were me, there would be no problem. No complaints about my back hurting, swollen ankles, and all the other things women complain about all the time. I insisted with a big grin. I would stop long enough to have the baby, then back to fishing for supper. I glanced down at my chest. Now breastfeeding might be a problem. Did you know that you are a complete idiot, Mr. Adams? Sarah answered very tartly. But you are, and will always be my idiot. Actually, if men could get pregnant, Then maternity leave would last 2 years, and morning sickness would be the nation's #1 health problem. And since you are a cook, I shouldn't have to remind you that pickles and ice cream would be on the menu of every restaurant in the world. We were both laughing and coming up with even more far-fetched ideas about what would happen if men could get pregnant. My favorite, and probably most accurate, was when Sarah said that if men could get pregnant, they would demand an epidural beginning in the first month of pregnancy. She also added that if men suffered from premenstrual syndrome, then all world governments would shut down for a week each month and that PMS medications would be covered by insurance. I would love to start a family with you, Rye, Sarah said, her tone suddenly serious. Matt always wanted kids, she admitted, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. But I kept putting it off, always saying maybe after next year's tour or coming up with some excuse. And now it's too late. She paused, taking a deep breath. The truth is, I was scared. Scared of the responsibility. Scared of how it would change my life. But after meeting you, Mr. Adams, I'm not scared anymore. She squeezed my hand, seeing what you've been through and how you never gave up. I know I wouldn't have to face anything alone. Then her voice grew even more determined. I need you to hear this, Ray. I know you spent 2 years looking for Jonah, but you didn't have my resources. You didn't have my contacts. You don't have my money. Did I ever tell you that my father served in the FBI for 40 years? Weigh my head. We will find Jonah, she said firmly. Together, I swear it, Ray. I swear it. Her head resting on my chest, her arm draped across me. On the morning of day 13, I woke up first and gently moved Sarah to the side. As she stirred, she looked up at me with a soft smile. Can't captains of ships perform marriages at sea? She asked. Yes, I replied, curious. Why? If we get rescued. As soon as we're on board, I'm asking the captain to marry us, she said confidently. But I haven't even proposed yet, I pointed out. Sarah smirked. You don't have to. I'm asking you, she said. Ray Adams, will you marry me? How long do I have to think about it? I teased. She smiled sweetly. About 30 seconds before I start getting impatient. Yes, Sarah Sullivan, I said, grinning. Yes, I'll marry you. Raleigh beamed. Sarah beamed, then rested her head against my shoulder. After a few minutes of comfortable silence, she looked at me. Can I sing something for you, Ray? It's a song I wrote just for you. I thought you weren't supposed to sing for a while, I asked. I won't push my voice too hard. I promise, she assured me. But I need you to hear this. I nodded and she sat in front of me, her knees touching mine as she held both of my hands and hers. Then with a deep breath, she began to sing. Born beneath the blazing sun. My mother lost her life for mine. My father, distant and unyielding, saw me as the fault, the sign. Lord, I've walked through endless trials, paying for what I haven't done. Each struggle steeper than the last. Yet I climbed them one by one. But this time, Lord, I thought you'd given a mountain too high to scale. No longer just another burden. This time, I feared I'd fail. She grew weary of the struggle, the sorrow, the toil, the fight. Tired of giving and getting nothing. Tired of being my wife. She took the light from my world, my pride, my laughter, my joy. She stole the reason I lived for. She took my little boy. And this time, Lord, I thought you'd given a mountain too high to scale. No longer just another burden. This time I feared I'd fail. But this time, Lord, you sent me a partner, a friend to help me rise. That mountain became just another hill. And together, we touched the skies. Yes, this time, Lord, you gave me strength, a hand to hold, a love so true. Together, we climbed, we fought, we won, and found my son and a love renewed. Side by side, we braved the storm and found my son, our love reborn this time. To say that I was a basket case by the time Sarah finished singing would probably be a gross understatement. I was crying so hard I couldn't even speak, much less thank Sarah for her words. And again, my love for this incredible woman skyrocketed upward. I lost count of the number of times we made love the rest of the day. Between fishing, eating, and swimming in the cove, I quickly found out I could not even begin to match her speed in the water. Because of the injuries to my shoulder, I was never able to fully extend my left arm over my head for a full swimming stroke. Since there was no injury to my right shoulder, I would always start curving to my right side when trying to swim. Once Sarah realized I was never going to be able to beat her swimming, she started making bets about who could do what to whom for the winner or loser of the race, then would bully me into accepting. Afraid of a little girl was her favorite ploy, and one that was usually accepted. Of course, since I was enjoying her inventive imagination as much as she was, I didn't mind losing. We both fell asleep that night, completely sad and exhausted. The last thing she said to me just before sleep claimed us was, "If you ever tell anyone that I asked you to marry me, that I'll kill you." We both laughed, then fell asleep. Just after a late breakfast on day 14, we had already made love twice that morning. We both heard the plane. I had been on the island now well over 6 months and knew we were far outside normal shipping lanes since I'd never seen a single boat or ship other than Sarah's doomed yacht. Only once or twice had I even seen the contrails of a high-flying jet. So, I knew this wasn't just a chance encounter. The plane I knew was searching for Sarah Sullivan, the #1 ranked recording artist in the world. With a heavy heart, I ran back and grabbed the mirror I had taken from her boat, and we used it to signal the plane once we saw it flying over the island. It circled overhead for several minutes. Then I saw something drop from the plane and land on the beach. When I got to the package, it contained some military-style MREs, meals, ready to eat, fresh water, and a note. The note read, "Ship about a day away. I have given coordinates. Will return afternoon with more provisions." Sarah, of course, was ecstatic and literally jumping up and down with joy. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. I knew my happiness was probably about to end. When Sarah belatedly realized I wasn't exactly celebrating, I again saw some of her Irish temper. "Ray Adams, stop it right now. Don't be like this," she demanded. "I told you yesterday, I will love you forever, and I will insist the captain of the ship coming to pick us up marry us immediately." "Sarah, I love you so much it hurts. But I can't let you do this. I can't let you commit professional suicide." I tried to explain, "How long do you think it will take before someone in Wilmington sees that we've been rescued, then remembers, 'Oh, isn't that the guy who was sentenced to prison for assault?' and tells the news media, 'How long will it be before you see a headline saying rescued singer marries convicted assaulter, hunt for former husband's missing body continues?' And how long before you see some story, probably in one of the really sleazy papers, claiming both you and Matt were alive when you got to the island? That either I killed him or together we murdered him. Didn't you say you and Matt had been having problems for 2 years? You think other people haven't noticed?" That word sank in. Sarah's face went pale. I have absolute proof I did nothing wrong. Yet some people still believe the worst. They think I escaped justice on a technicality. People always assume the worst. I took a deep breath. As much as I love you, SB, and as much as I'd give anything to be with you, I can't let you do this to yourself. I can't let you destroy yourself. I dropped to my knees in the sand, my voice breaking. I can't let you destroy yourself, SB. The hardest I've ever been hit was by my former drill instructor after I told him off. Almost as hard were my father's punches during our fight. The third hardest was when Sarah slapped me. I had been on my knees, and it literally knocked me onto my side. I got up and she slapped me again, then shoved me over onto my back. She straddled me, her face inches from mine, and unleashed a storm of words I never imagined she knew. Words that would have made my drill instructor proud. "Listen to me, you stubborn fool." She said, "You are about the most frustrating person I've ever met. But you're my frustrating person. If you think I care what others say, then you don't deserve me. Unless you're a complete liar, you agreed to marry me. And by God, I'm holding you to it. Do you hear me? If that ship comes tomorrow, then by tomorrow night, I will be Mrs. Ray, stubborn as a Rockham's. Do you understand? I don't care what anyone thinks about it." Yeah, my drill instructor would have been impressed. The next night, Mrs. Adams and I celebrated with a real meal. Steak instead of fish for once. 4 days later, we arrived at Pearl Harbor where hundreds, maybe thousands of people were waiting. Reporters, fans, well-wishers, cameras flashing from every direction. An immense cheer went up as we walked down the gangplank, and Sarah answered questions for a couple of hours. I tried to stay out of the limelight. But of course, Sarah had to introduce me and explain how I had saved her life by getting her off the sinking boat while she was unconscious, then nursing her back to health, spoon-feeding her until she had regained her strength. At first, all the reports were incredibly positive, with the news media reporting an almost fairy tale-like rescue. During the first 3 days we were back, I was described as a hero. Sarah told the news media about my being a disabled veteran due to my wounds from Iraq. And I think I had nearly as many requests for interviews from the news media as Sarah did. I turned down all the requests. At my insistence, Sarah did not tell the news media we had actually already been married by the ship's captain. Somehow, I didn't think it would be appropriate to tell everyone Sarah and I had gotten married just 2 weeks after her then husband had been lost at sea. As I had warned Sarah, however, the vultures soon started coming out. Someone on the ship told a reporter about our being married the same day we were rescued. Then, all hell broke loose. Although my official records had been cleared of any arrest or conviction as ordered by the judge in North Carolina, you can't go back and erase newspaper stories. And there were lots of old newspaper stories. Within a week, I was played alive by the press, called every name in the book, and soon all the talking heads on television and radio were interviewing psychologists who claimed I had brainwashed an injured, and at the time, somewhat mentally impaired woman into marrying me. Most of the stories at first portrayed Sarah in a positive light, with my being cast as the villain. Sarah needed extensive counseling to free herself from my evil influence, and most of the so-called experts said the marriage would not last another week. As I had predicted, it didn't take too long before there were reports indicating Matt had probably been alive, and either I by myself or Sarah and I, together, had killed him. There was even one report that claimed Sarah had deliberately put me, her secret lover for several years, on the island just for that purpose. Finally, about a month after we were rescued, another scandal broke out. It seemed that some aging rocker had been caught with a 14-year-old girl and her mom at the same time. By the end of our second month back, you could hardly find any stories about me and Sarah. Not that we really cared. After the first week, we went into seclusion. We had spent the entire 2 months, believe it or not, on a private island in the Caribbean. And neither of us read a single paper, nor watched or listened to radio or television. And no, I did not eat any fish during those 2 months. We ate a lot of hamburgers, cheeseburgers, hot dogs, steak, prime rib, pork chops, lamb chops, and almost any other kind of meat you could name. But no fish. And I ate enough vegetables to probably sink a ship. The day after we returned to California in her private jet, Sarah had a doctor's appointment to see how her vocal cords were doing. Or at least, that is what she told me. She insisted on going by herself, using the excuse that I needed to familiarize myself with our new home. "I don't want you to get lost on the way to our bedroom," was how she put it. Actually, it was probably good advice since there were so many rooms. It would have been easy to get lost. The next day, Sarah asked me to go with her for a meeting with her attorney. Once we were in his office, Sarah introduced me to an older gentleman who seemed to have a rather perpetual sour look on his face. "Ray, this is Sam Waters. Sam has represented me for over 10 years now, and I know he always only has my best interests in mind." Ray. Miss Ever went ballistic when he found out we were married without a prenuptial agreement. "I've already told him you would have no trouble signing a post-nuptial agreement." "Is that right?" I told Sarah that was right. Mr. Waters finally spoke his first words to me. "Before we go any further, is there anything in particular you want in this agreement, Mr. Adams?" Sarah and I were holding hands. If Sarah ever decides she doesn't love me, doesn't want me around, then the only thing I want is the clothes on my back, I answered. Sarah squeezed my hand tightly. "Oh, and maybe enough money to buy a pickup truck. Not necessarily the top of the line, but just a nice pickup." "Told you, Sam," she said as she looked at her attorney for the first time. Mr. Waters smiled a little, then took some papers out of a folder. "This is the post-nuptial agreement Sarah has asked you to sign," he said. "First, I need Sarah's signature." Sarah signed, then passed the agreement to me. It was for a legal document incredibly short. "To my husband, Raymond Adams, Jr. All that I am, all that I have, all that I will ever have, is now yours equally forever." Sarah had signed it. The next part was almost identical. "To my wife, Sarah Sullivan Adams. All that I am, all that I have, all that I will ever have, is now yours equally forever." There was a place for my signature, but it took about 10 minutes and half a box of Kleenex before I could see where to sign. Sarah was, of course, crying as well. And when I could finally look up, I was surprised to see Mr. Waters crying along with us. "Damnedest legal document I have ever seen," he said, then shook my hand. He signed, witnessing both signatures, then had his secretary, who was also present and also crying, witness the signatures as well. "Then make copies for everyone. I love you, Mrs. Adams," I told Sarah when we got on the elevator. "Not as much as I love you, Mr. Adams," she answered. When we got back to Sarah's mansion in Beverly Hills, her personal secretary was on the phone and immediately had a look of relief. "He just came back in. Hold for a second, please." Then handed me the phone, whispering that it was an urgent call from Wyoming. The only phone calls I'd received so far were from reporters who wanted to interview me about my arrest and conviction. "Hello," I said. "Is this Raymond Adams, Jr.?" I heard a woman's voice say. Yes, it is," I answered. "This is Liza Taylor with the Department of Family and Children's Services for the state of Wyoming. Do you have a son named Jonah and a daughter named Vivian?" As soon as I heard the name Jonah, I thought I would pass out. My knees gave way, and only the chairs Sarah pushed at me kept me from falling to the floor. I couldn't even answer at first and heard Liza Taylor repeating, "Hello, hello, are you still there?" I finally managed a strangled yes. "Sir, I am sorry to have to tell you this, but your ex-wife, who was using the name Victoria Monroe, was killed 2 months ago in a traffic accident. But your son and daughter are both safe. They have been placed in foster care, but neither was injured and they are perfectly fine." Homelessness. I'm not even sure what I said after that, but think I mumbled, "My son and daughter are safe, My son and daughter are safe. Jonah. Jonah. Then I pretty much lost it. Sarah had glanced sharply at me when she heard my words and had to take the phone since I was now pretty much a basket case. Hello, this is Mrs. Adams. I'm afraid my husband is overcome with emotion at the moment. Can you tell me who you are and what is this about his son and daughter? How long Sarah was on the phone. But I finally heard her say we will be flying out within the hour. Then hung up. I heard her tell her secretary to contact the pilots of her plane and for them to file an emergency flight plan to Cheyenne, Wyoming, and to be ready to leave as soon as we arrived at the airport. An hour later, we were airborne. I had finally calmed down enough for Sarah to explain to me what Liza Taylor had said. Of course, I had 1,000 questions, which Sarah couldn't answer. Monroe had been Victoria's mother's maiden name, so I could understand that. But what was this about a daughter? In her letter, Victoria had said, I was not the father. But why then use the name Vivian, which had been my mother's first name? Of course, Sarah couldn't answer those questions, but explained officials in Wyoming had found some records, including a copy of our original marriage certificate, along with copies of both Jonah's and Vivian's birth certificates, and that I was listed as the father on both. They had found the records while going through Victoria's effects after she had been killed. If I thought my world had been turned upside down already, and it had been, Sarah's next words to me left me gasping for breath. I was going to tell you tonight after dinner, but I think I had better let you know now. I'm pregnant. Ray, you and I are going to have twins. It looks like both a son and daughter. The emotional overload was almost too much. I laughed. I cried. I picked Sarah up in my arms and twirled her around the cabin of the airplane. And I kissed her. And I kissed her. And I kissed her. SB, I finally said, have I told you today how much I love you? Huh? Not really, she answered with a smile. I think you might have halfway mentioned it once or twice. I picked up my beautiful bride and carried her to the bedroom in the back of the plane and made love to her until the captain announced over the intercom that he was making his final approach to Cheyenne. Sarah and I quickly got dressed, then took our seats. After landing, Sarah called a number she had been given, and we took a taxi to the home of the foster parents, John and Betty Reynolds. Liza Taylor was also there and said before we could see the kids, she needed to caution us. I know you will be tempted to just grab them and hug them, she explained. But you have to realize this is all new and will probably be very scary for them. You can tell them who you are and that you love them, but let them come to you at their pace. Let them get used to you. Jonah is old enough to understand and knows that his mother died. But Vivian is only 2 and is really scared right now. Vivian will probably actually accept you first since she is so young. But Jonah is really confused and frightened now. Everything he has known has been taken away, and it will take him a while to accept you. How long has it been since you've seen your children? She asked me. I explained that I hadn't seen Jonah in over 3 years and had never actually seen Vivian since her mother had left before she was born. I didn't tell Liza that Victoria had written to me that I was not Vivian's father. Sarah and I had already discussed this, and we both agreed we could never separate a brother and sister, or even a half-brother and half-sister. As far as I was concerned, I would raise Vivian as my own, even if we weren't related. Or to be more accurate, Sarah and I would raise them both as our own. The foster parents had been mostly quiet up to now, but then Betty said something that surprised me. Vivian has your eyes, she said. Even more than Jonah has. I mean, they both have your eyes, but it is even more noticeable in Vivian. Does Vivian have a birthmark? I was getting ready to point to my back when Betty interrupted. Above her right hip, Just like Jonah has, she confirmed. I looked at Sarah, and she looked at me. Sarah already knew I had a birthmark above my right hip. When can I see my children? I asked. Betty stood up and said, I'll get them. In a few minutes, she walked in carrying Vivian and holding Jonah's hand. Jonah was holding back, and it almost broke my heart in two to see the fear in his eyes at meeting these strangers. Betty put Vivian down, and she clung to Betty's leg. I got down on my knees and started, Jonah, I don't know if you remember me and Vivian. I know you have never seen me, but I am your father. I am your daddy, and I love you both so much. This is my wife, Sarah. Both children stood beside Betty for a minute. Then Vivian walked over to me and touched my face. You are my daddy? She asked in her little voice. Yes, Vivian. I am your daddy, and I love you very much, I answered. Vivian turned to Sarah and said, You are pretty. Are you going to be my mommy? Sarah also got down on her knees, and I watched Vivian walk over to Sarah and hug her. Tears started streaming down Sarah's face, and she could barely talk as she answered her. Yes, Vivian, I am going to be your mommy. I love you, sweetheart. Joan finally walked over to me, only to stop a couple of feet away. Plane, he said. I didn't understand, so he repeated it a little louder. Plane. It took a minute for me to understand. One of the little things I used to do with Jonah was put his chest in one palm and his legs in the other, then fly him around the room making aircraft-like noises. He wasn't saying plane, he was saying plane. Yes, Jonah. Plane. I used to play plane with you all the time. Would you like to play now? He hesitated, then nodded. I stood up and picked him up with one arm under his chest and the other under his legs, and started saying, zoom, 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 as I twirled him around me. How on earth could he have remembered that from when he was only 2? Jonah was laughing, and I was laughing and crying. I finally put him down and knelt beside him. Then Jonah put his 2 little arms around me and said the single most beautiful word in the English language. Daddy. Sarah had something else to say as well. Jonah, Vivian, in about 8 months, you are going to have a new brother and sister to play with, she said as she rubbed her stomach. They are going to need your help to teach them all about being a boy and a girl. You're pregnant? Asked Liza, and Sarah confirmed it. Liza and the Reynolds congratulated us. You know, it's moments like this that make my job worth it, said Liza. Betty went to get their clothes and toys while we waited. I'm sorry I couldn't wash their clothes before you got here, said Betty. But our washing machine broke today. He told her not to worry about it, and then looked at me. I could already see the wheels turning in her head. Could I get a glass of water before we leave? Sarah asked, then insisted on following Betty to the kitchen. After we headed back to the airport in the taxi, Sarah told me their refrigerator was at least 10 years old, and the oven looked even older. While waiting for the plane to take off to return us to California, Sarah called the local Lowe's and paid for and arranged for next day delivery of the top-of-the-line washer, dryer, refrigerator, and oven the store sold. All anonymously, of course. The next year, after the twins were born, Sarah and I flew back to Cheyenne for a one-day trip. I had found out where Victoria was buried, and Sarah and I visited the grave. Sarah held my hand as I knelt down beside the grave. Then she knelt down also. I've never thanked you, Victoria, for giving me 2 beautiful children. I owe you so much. You believed in me and got the conviction overturned. You gave me 2 adorable children. I hated you for so long for taking my son away from me. But if you had not, then I would never have met this incredible woman beside me. I don't know if it matters to you or not, or if somehow you can hear me now. But I just want to say thank you for all the good you did in your life. If it does matter, then I want you to know I forgive you for taking Jonah and Vivian away. And I am truly sorry I wasn't a better husband. I didn't say it enough when we were together, but I can say it now and mean it. I love you, Victoria. I will always love you for the good, and hope you can also forgive me for not being what you needed. I was starting to get up when Sarah stopped me. Victoria, I never met you, but I also want to thank you for believing in this wonderful man here. If not for you, he would still be in prison for a crime he did not commit. I want you to know that woman to woman and mother to mother. I could not love your children any more than I already do. I will make sure they never forget about you. They will always know that their birth mommy loved them also. I never got a chance to meet you, and thank you for giving Ray back his life. But I will always be grateful and want you to know that I love you too. Left Cheyenne, we arranged to have fresh flowers put on her grave every other week for the rest of our lives. Sarah was never able to resume her full music career. The damage to her vocal cords was just too severe. What she could do was record songs in a studio, but not for more than an hour or two a day, and not more than 3 days a week. Going on tour was out of the question. She could also appear on television for specials and, within the already imposed limits, make music videos. She could also write songs for other singers as well, and had many more #1 songs that way as well. After a couple of leisurely years, I finally was about to go stir crazy. There's only so much you can do around a home, even multiple homes. Sarah already had caretakers for the lawn and gardens, and I didn't want people to lose their jobs. So, while I tried to help, I think I was mostly in the way. I also found out that I couldn't play golf because of the old shoulder injury. What could I do? Well, one thing I could do very well was cook. It took a year of planning, decorating, and everything that is associated with opening a restaurant. But Sarah and I finally opened our own restaurant in Beverly Hills. Sarah told me she was pregnant again. In the same week we opened the restaurant. From the very first day the restaurant was opened, it was an overwhelming success. And all of the movers and shakers in television, movies, and sports regularly ate there. I regularly offered discounts to anyone in uniform, be it military, law enforcement, or fire and rescue. If it happened to be junior-ranking enlisted men trying to impress a wife or girlfriend, then as often as not, I would comp their meals, but not alcohol purchases. It was not unusual to see a young Army specialist, Navy seaman, or Marine private first class or corporal, eating and rubbing elbows with Academy Award-winning actors and actresses. I have seen more than just 1 or 2 actresses whose names are internationally known leave the restaurant with young enlisted Marines, sailors, or soldiers. Ray's Seafood Shack became the place to eat in Beverly Hills. Yes, it was a damn seafood place. Sarah had absolutely insisted on that to always remind her of our first 2 weeks together, and how I had cooked for her and fed her when she was too weak to feed herself, and how we fell in love on the island. She even had a miniature reproduction made of the lagoon on the island as the centerpiece of the entire restaurant. We actually rented a seaplane and flew the architects to the island so they could take extensive pictures and make it as authentic as possible. How can you say no to the woman you love more than life itself? And since no self-respecting cook or chef will let anything be prepared without tasting samples, I still had to eat fish all the damn time.